Hello, YouTube. All right. Think I got it right. Hello. Let me just get Facebook set up. Hey, only 5 minutes late. Hi, Donna. Hey, girl, nice to see you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it is my birthday tomorrow. All right, we are now live on YouTube, on Facebook also. Hold on. There we go. I have been working all weekend. I've been doing lots of research. I got lots of things to talk to you about. Hi, DJ. Okay. All right. There we go. Are we good here? Yeah, I think we're good here. How are you doing, Donna? Did I? No, not yet. Thank you, though. Thank you for the birthday wishes. Hi, Pam. Uh-oh, Pam says her back is hurting so bad. I'm sorry to hear that, Pam. Hi, Deborah. Nice to see you. Nice to see everybody. It has been super, super hot here. It was almost 100. It's 111 up in Ukiah. It was about 103 or 104 here. So we are toasty. Nice to see you, Pam. Very, very, very nice to see you. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. All righty, my friends. So. This is our regular national support group meeting. Okay, I feel like I look weird. Okay, if I look weird, I apologize. It is what it is. This is who you're getting. Not perfect in any way, shape, or form. Hi, Brenda. Nice to see you. Hello, Gamal. Hello, Boria. Hi, Teresa. You've been in a flare-up. Sorry to hear that, girl. Let's see if we can help you. All right, so let me introduce myself. Oh, thank you, hon. You're good for my ego. So let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Jill Osborne. I'm the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network, the longest serving IC support group leader in the United States, close to being in the world. I do think Germany is ahead of me in the world. I think possibly. I'm not sure. I don't know if they're still holding group meetings like we are. I bring to you 3 degrees. I've been doing this for 28 years, and I love doing support group meetings. Hello, Gamal from Egypt. Nice to see you. Very, very nice to see you. The IC Network has worked with hundreds of thousands of patients in the last 28 years in 92 countries. It is my job to bring you information, education. I want to bring you closer to your doctor. I want to help you find correct treatments. I want to support you, encourage you, nudge you if you need to be nudged, give you the little lecture if you need to have that little lecture because you're not doing the things you should be doing. Ultimately, that's what a support group leader does. And it was interesting. I was working with some researchers at the University of New Mexico on Friday because we're going to be helping them with a clinical trial or a research study next month. And they were like, Jill, how you're so enthusiastic. You're so, you just make us want to do more. And I'm like, that's my job. That's what I want to do. I want to get you involved. I want to help you learn more about this. I want to give you hope. Remember, and I've talked about this before, the reason why I got involved was because after my IC started, and I realized I'm IC subtype 5, so I had a lot of other conditions before the IC started when I was 32. And my pain when it started was off the charts. Oh my God, I can barely walk. It was that bad. And it was bad for about 5 years. before it got better. But I had a doctor at urgent care or the emergency room say to me, Jill, you will forever be a burden on your family. This is your life. Get used to it. You're always going to live with severe pain. And that was the moment that woke me up, because that was the moment in which I went, wait a second. Oh, Ann says it's not working on Facebook. Uh-oh. Hold on a sec. Let me look here. Ann, I'm getting a lot of comments from Facebook. Yeah, it's working over there. All right. So anyway, I have this jerk of a doctor, this absolute jerk of a doctor say to me, you will forever be a burden on your family. And I went, wait a second. I have 3 college degrees. I will prove you wrong, you son of a bitch. How dare you say this to me? This is below the waist. It was not above the waist. And one of the things I pointed out is IC doesn't affect your intelligence. It doesn't affect your brain. It doesn't affect your hands. It doesn't affect your desire to want to live a better life. Yes, it is extremely challenging. Yes, it creates obstacles. Yes, we have to learn to overcome those obstacles. Yes, we have to try to figure out causes rather than effects. A lot of you get very involved in focusing on symptoms. And when you call me, it's like bladder, 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 bladder. And you're not understanding that the bladder can be a victim of other things. And that's really what's changed is we are no longer look at IC, as a bladder disease. We do not look at interstitial cystitis, bladder pain syndrome as a incurable bladder disease anymore. We look at it as a pelvic pain syndrome. Why? Because other structures are often involved. So anyway, this is our meeting. Now, normally when I do these meetings, I usually do about 30 minutes of an educational lecture. I'm going to be doing that today. Then we're going to take your questions and answers. I'm more than happy to take any question you have about any topic, you name it. I'm willing to take it. No shame, no blame. You want to talk about constipation? We can talk about constipation. You want to talk about sex? We can talk about sex. You want to talk about hemorrhoids? We can talk about hemorrhoids. It's okay. It's absolutely okay. I'm willing to take any questions you've got at all. But before we do that, I have to say that yesterday, because it was so hot, I just stayed in this room with the air conditioner on and did nothing except read about IC. And I actually have a pretty long list of things that I want to talk to you about, because I was going through a lot of new research studies, going through a lot of new information, and I think you're going to find this really, really interesting. So, I've been corresponding, we have been doing a lot of kind of research about IC and COVID. And I was corresponding with my counterpart in Europe. Her name is Jane Malink. She runs the International Painful Bladder Foundation. She sends out a fabulous newsletter. It's a very research-oriented newsletter. If you go over to painful-bladder.org, you can go over to her website. She doesn't do meetings or anything like that. And unfortunately, she had COVID, and it's really hit her very, very hard. So anyway, she and I have been corresponding a bit about some of the research with COVID. We know that Dr. Thea Harides is going to be doing something with Dr. Whitmore. We're waiting for that. We've given them our data. Anyway, in the email she sent me today, she sent me a little bomb, and I'm waiting to hear back from her. But guess what? There's another name change. There is another name change now for quote unquote IC. And let's see here. What did she say here? IC is now going to be named chronic primary bladder pain syndrome. And I emailed her back and I said, all right, okay, who made that decision? And she hasn't gotten back to me yet because it's nighttime here. It's nighttime over in Europe where she is. So the new name, it might be associated with a pain a nonprofit or something like that. The new name that they're going to be using is, let me say it again. Hold on. I want to get it right. Chronic primary bladder pain syndrome. Chronic primary bladder pain syndrome. I don't get it. I know that there has been a very consistent effort to want to follow what we call the nomenclature, the naming structures of other pain conditions. That's why we don't call it painful bladder syndrome. We call it bladder pain syndrome because that's how other pain conditions are described, where they put the organ first. I don't know the origin of this name, chronic primary bladder pain syndrome. She also says here, the chronic pain, the ICD chronic pain task force is trying to categorize pelvic pain syndromes in general. All right. So anyway, don't be surprised if you hear another name for IC. I was thinking today as I was taking my walk this morning, because I've been knowing, for years now that our name IC Network is technically going to be gone because there's going to be some point in time where we're not going to be using the word IC. What am I going to change it to? I don't know. Teresa, it says wants to know the website for Jane's website. It's painful-bladder.org, I think is her website. Okay. So we've gone through a number of names over the last 20 years. So interstitial cystitis is not the correct name because it implies that there's a problem with the interstitial layer. There's interstitial lung disease, and there's kind of this assumption that quote unquote IC is the same. It's not. Everybody agrees it's not. And so 15 years ago, 20 years ago, most doctors started referring to this as bladder pain syndrome, painful bladder syndrome, or if you're in Asia, hypersensitive bladder syndrome. So that's very interesting. I have now updated our IC Awareness Month website, icawareness.org. September is IC Awareness Month. And IC Awareness Month is not about me. It's not about the IC Network. It's not about the ICA. It's about you. We modeled it after National Women's Health Week. The entire goal of IC Awareness Month is to give you resources that you can use in your community to raise awareness about IC. You're the one who knows. Do you have good doctors or bad doctors? Do you have school personnel who refuse to allow IC students to use the restroom? This is about reaching out when there are areas in our community that are disrespectful, unknowledgeable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you go on over to icawareness.org, you can see the website with the new logo. And this is, I can't show it to you. You have to go over there because I'm simulcasting right now. So the theme for this year is Hear Our Stories. IC is not just a bladder disease. We must reach those patients who are suffering in silence. So my intention with the campaign this year is I want to document the diversity and success stories in the IC patient population. And so, because we're really now trying to step away from people telling you that this is all in your head or this is incurable. We need you to understand that your diagnosis has to be more than just your bladder. We have to look at your muscles. We have to look at your bones. We've got to look at fibroid tumors or endometriosis for women. We have to look at Tarlov cysts. We have to look at bones. There's an exhaustive list of things that should be ruled out. And, that's really one of the motivations that we have now is that so many of you have been given bladder therapies for years and you've never gotten better. Why? Because it might not be your bladder. It might be your pelvic floor. It might be something else. It might be scar tissue. It might be, what I explained last week, we had a new case study published of a woman who had quote unquote Hunner's lesions, the worst form of IC. She also had an extremely severe prolapse. She had a torn ligament that caused her vagina to twist basically backwards, right? Obviously, her pain was insane, absolutely insane. So they went in, to restore the prolapse, they repaired the ligament, got everything back in its right position. And what do you think happened? She was cured of her Hunner's lesions. This is the first documented case where we've associated Hunner's lesions, severe lesions or ulceration in the bladder wall, with a musculoskeletal issue. And I still don't quite understand how that happens. I mean, I'm thinking reduced blood supply, because if the vagina is twisted, then we're seeing potentially blood vessels that are twisted. We're seeing nerves that are twisted. We're seeing muscles that are trying to compensate. And somehow that led to the development of lesions. But once they fixed that, her bladder healed, and the doctors report that she is cured. Think of a couple of other really interesting cases. A lady called. She had developed IC fairly suddenly, about a year or so before she called me. She tried bladder therapies, nothing worked. She was afraid of having the testing done. And I asked her, I said, well, did this begin after any specific event? She said, yeah, it began immediately after I had a hysterectomy. And what they later found in her case is that the surgeon from the hysterectomy had perforated her bladder with a stitch. And when they went in and they looked at her bladder, they could see the stitch. They could see the stitch in her bladder wall. They pulled it out, bam, cured. Think about another case. So we had a woman who, speaking of stitches, very interesting. This is a retired MD. It's interesting because I met her at our local pub at trivia night, because before COVID, I used to go play trivia night with some friends. And anyway, got to meet her one day, and she goes, we introduced ourselves, and she goes, hey, I've got a really interesting story to share with you about my quote unquote IC. And I'm like, hit me. I love these crazy stories. The more we document them, the better. And she goes, well, one day I started having frequency urgency, and it was pretty severe. And she was a big runner. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm immediately thinking for people who are runners, pelvic floor, right? And it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And she noticed that it was particularly worse when she was running. So she stopped running. She started walking. And it wasn't getting better. She goes to the urologist. The urologist finds nothing. And they give her the old, 1, 2, hey, it must be in your head. Hey, you must be you must be menopausal. The whole crapshoot, right? That so many of us are given. And then she one day, so she's retired. She's at home. She's suffering. She feels an overwhelming need to pee. And so she goes into the bathroom and she's peeing, and she feels like she needs to strain. So she pushes. And what do you think happened? Out popped something physical. She could feel it. She looked in the toilet, and it was a row of blue stitches. She's like, what the hell? What the hell? And so she's looking in the toilet, and then she accidentally flushed them down. Accidentally, right? So she calls the urologist. She goes, you're not going to believe what happened. You're not going to believe what happened. I peed out some stitches, and as soon as I peed them out, my pain went away. And the urologist is like, yeah, right, sure. I don't know if I believe you or not, right? And she's like, hey, this is cool. Okay, this is cool. I feel good. She goes back to running very, very quickly. Very, very quickly, it gets worse again. And it gets exponentially worse. So she's now down to being almost bedbound. Like she's just literally can't run. She can't walk. And they decide to go in and do an exploratory laparotomy. What did they find? Her belly was filled with migrating blue stitches, moving all over the place. Because apparently 10 years earlier, after she'd had a baby, she had a tummy tuck. And she let a medical student do it. And the medical student used the wrong stitches, used polypropylene stitches. And what happened? They started moving throughout her body. And in fact, they had moved through her bladder wall into her bladder. It basically perforated her bladder. And they found a lot more stitches, because obviously that's where she had a lot of the surgery, in right around her bladder. So they went in, cleaned them up, and she's way better now. Think about another patient who'd had IC for 3 to 4 years, totally afraid to have testing done, wouldn't do any testing at all. It got so bad, she's like, okay, you got to look. So she lets a doctor do an in-office cysto. What does he find? A giant bladder stone. A bladder stone it's like a kidney stone, right? It's minerals. It's a sharp little bundle of crystal. And normally it would pass through your urine, through your urethra, and out of your body. You shouldn't be pushing stones anyway. But in her case, she had traveled to Europe, and she deliberately did not drink water. Even so, on the flight over, bam, she didn't drink the water, and she started feeling bladder problems as soon as she got there. And then she was in Europe for 2 weeks, and then on the way back, same thing, didn't drink water, and her trip got delayed. So like literally, she barely drank anything for almost a day, and she super concentrated her urine. And all those crystals came together and created a stone. And they went in, they broke it up, emptied it out, cured. So it's very important that you understand here that a diagnosis of IC at this point in time is fairly meaningless. It's a grab bag diagnosis. It's not specific enough. We have to do a more rigorous diagnostic workup to rule stuff in and rule stuff out. And a lot of this has to do with how you're approaching your doctor, because you can't go in and say bladder, 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 bladder. Because if you do that, they're just going to focus on your bladder, 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 bladder. And God forbid you have a cysto and your bladder's normal and he looks at you like you're a nut. Hey, we know that. We've all been there. Doesn't matter if you're a school teacher or the chairman of a trauma unit. It's another patient I worked for, or a Hollywood actor, movie star, you name it, judges, NASA astronauts. I've worked with a NASA astronaut with this. I've worked with Secret Service officer serving in the White House. This was some time ago. This was about 10 years ago. But this happens to anybody. Injuries and trauma happen to anybody. And we've got to do an exhaustive workup to make sure that we haven't missed anything. What the AUA says, hey, if you're not getting better, if you're not responding to therapy, if you're getting worse rather than better, for God's sake, stop what you're doing, take a step back, and let's revisit the diagnosis. And a lot of you, I got to be really honest here, a lot of you are told what the problem is. Like, you got tight muscles, you need to have pelvic floor work, and you won't do it because you're either uncomfortable with it or you just don't get it. You don't understand that as long as you have tight muscles, blood supply is limited. It's going to be impossible for the bladder to be healthy. Cause and effect. The effect is your symptoms. We got to figure out the cause. So again, getting back to IC Awareness Month, here are stories. IC is not just a bladder disease. And on our website, there's a link where you can share your story. And what I really would love for you to do, because I want to do a book of success stories. I mean, we have got to, and I want to show the depth and breadth in this community. I want to show patients who are doing well with Hunter's lesions. I want to show patients who are doing well with any other variant of IC, whether it's menopause or whether it is chemical irritation or whether it is pudendal neuralgia. We have got to get these stories out so that you can read them and see the hope and how people helped each other and how that patient found relief and what led them on that journey. Right? So come on over to icawareness.org. Go check out that website. And if you can, share your story. I ask for you to, if possible, don't forget, if you want me to contact you again, especially if you have questions, you got to put your email address in there. I'm asking you to try to tell us what you think your subtype is. That's question number one. Question number two is, was your IC triggered by an event, a fall, having a child? I want to hear what you think triggered your symptoms. The second thing I want to know is, do you think you were misdiagnosed with IC? Did they find something else instead? If so, what is it? What was it? And then number 3, what worked for you? What worked for you and what didn't work for you, right? So that's my goal, I think, for the year. Callie says subtype. Yes, Callie, we've got 5 variations of IC. 100 and this is I will get to this actually a little bit more in a couple of minutes. Okay, Callie. So if you can hold on, I'll get this to you a little bit more. But we talk about subtyping in every meeting. We've been doing that for a year now. Okay. So IC Awareness Month. Now, I have not written the press release yet. I'm still working on that. Hopefully you can take the press release. You can send it to your doctor. I'm sorry, send it to your local paper. Tell them your story. If you're willing to go there and let people know that you were misdiagnosed, et cetera, et cetera. Judy says, what's the difference between a hydrodistension and installations? A hydrodistension, what they're doing is they are inflating your bladder with fluid. They're stretching it out. When you stretch it out, you break the nerves. So you break the nerves in the bladder wall. And so I call it a destructive therapy. The reason why you feel better is because the nerves are broken. So you can't feel the frequency, urgency, pain. The problem is that the bladder will grow the nerves back. And in many cases, will grow more nerves back than you originally had. So hydrodistension is not really a therapy anymore. We don't use it as a therapy. It's very traumatic to the tissue. Whereas an installation is something that can immediately soothe an irritated bladder wall, like a rescue installation, where they use some heparin and some lidocaine to coat the bladder and numb the bladder wall. And that's appropriate for IC subtype 2 bladder wall driven. All right. So anyway, IC Awareness Month. Also, guys, we've got a ton of bracelets, silicone awareness bracelets, and car magnets. And so if you'd like to wear it, please do. They're super inexpensive. Now, the last thing I want to say about IC Awareness Month is we're going to be doing our poster contest. We're going to be doing our meme contest. The winner gets a $100 Amazon gift card. The second place gets a $50 Amazon gift card. The third place gets $25. So I really hope you'll participate by doing posters and memes and stuff like that, because we can share them and reach more people. I've taken down nominate your doctor for medical provider of the year. I'm not going to do that this year. And the reason why we're not going to do that is because of fire season. Last year, our power was turned off at least 15, 16 times in the fall. And then, of course, we evacuated and we almost burned. And I literally just can't do it. I cannot do it. And so if there is somebody else out there who would like to step up and help us with help me with IC Awareness Month, it's not a big committee this year. If you want to be a big committee, that's fine. I'm happy to provide advice, but I got my hands full with fire season and caring for elderly parents. And we have been told this is an apocalyptic year. There's already a huge fire north of us, and it can a matter of an hour before it burns over my hill, right? So I got to be real here. IC Awareness Month has been very tough for me the last 4 years. So if somebody wants to step forward and help do the nominations for Doctor Care Provider of the Year, Physical Therapist of the Year, we can put it back up, but just know that I can't do it. All right? It is what it is. It is what it is. Okay, I'm going to check that off my list. So we check that off. We got to check off. Now, the third thing I need to talk to you about. Now, y'all know that it was the IC Network and myself that broke the Elmeron eye disease story, right? I'm the one who brought that to you. And it was a very, very difficult decision to make, but I believe in being that you deserve the full access of the pros and cons of the therapies that you do. It's called informed consent. You deserve informed consent. And in the end, although that has upended the lives of tens of thousands of patients, the research studies continue to support and establish that Elmeron is associated with very severe eye disease, including blindness. And if you need more information on that, you could come on over to our main website, icnetwork.org, and there's a whole section on that. So one of the parts of my job that I absolutely love is being a consumer advocate. I love being a consumer advocate. That's a fun part of my job. If I weren't doing the IC network and if I had money, I would be doing a nonprofit doing consumer awareness things in addition to IC stuff. So over on our website is a new blog I put up about a new little research study that passed my desk last week that was absolutely stunning. I think it's the single missed story of the year so far. And that is, we now have conclusive proof that NutraSweet aspartame causes cancer. So aspartame was approved like in 1985, somewhere back then. And the FDA approved it with very small studies, 3 or 4 studies that studied 40 rats each, right? There were no human studies at the time. And based upon that early data, they thought, okay, this appears to be safe. And they approved it. And of course, immediately the consumer industry stepped in, the food industry stepped in. And before you knew it, aspartame NutraSweet was in 5,000 consumer products, foods and beverages that we eat, especially in children and pregnant women. They both consume ridiculously high levels of NutraSweet, okay? So in 1996, an Italian research team did their first study, and it was called a mega experiment. So they didn't study 40 rats. They studied hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rats over a period of time, over their lifetime. So basically, if a rat was pregnant with babies, they fed the mother aspartame. And then they followed the babies throughout their entire lifetime to see what that early exposure to aspartame did to them. And the data was stunning. That cancer was found on nerves. It was found, well, I wrote a whole blog on it. It was found throughout the body. And it was a dose response curve. So the more you were exposed to it, the worse it was. The more aspartame you were exposed to, the greater the likelihood that you would develop cancer, that those rats would develop cancer. And a particular point that study showed is that fetuses were remarkably what's the right word? Vulnerable to aspartame exposure. And when you think about a baby and you think about, so like, let's just say as an example, the FDA has said that 20 grams a day was safe in, let's just say, an adult who weighs 200 pounds. Right. So they established the safety data as you can do 20 grams a day and it's supposed safe. And guys, I'm making that number up. I'm just using that as an example. But understand a fetus, if you're pregnant and you're drinking NutraSweet, that fetus doesn't weigh 200 pounds. That fetus weighs 3 pounds or 4 pounds. And yet they're getting a massive dose of aspartame through the bloodstream. And so what that research showed was that children were very, very exposed and vulnerable. And that was because they were exposed to such high quantities as a fetus. So what was interesting about that is when that study, that original Italian study came out, obviously the people making money at aspartame were furious. And so it got massively criticized. And one of the ways that it got criticized is that, and this was the European Food Safety Group or whatever, they said that the lung lesions found in the rats were potentially infection, rather a specific type of infection, rather than true malignant cancer. And so everybody just trashed the Italian study big time, like big time. Well, let me tell you, they came back with a bang. they came back with a bang. And what they did is they used next generation techniques to pull samples from all of these lesions they were finding to prove that they were cancer, malignant cancer, as compared to infection. And they proved it. They found infection in none of them, that this was widespread cancer in the lungs, in the specific type of nerve cancer that was found. So anyway, they in their conclusion of the study, they literally begged the FDA and the European food groups to take a step back and look at this new data, because they believe that the increase in cancers that we're seeing, especially childhood cancers, lymphomas, they tracked a lot of lymphomas in their animals. And what are we seeing in people? We're seeing an increase in lymphomas and other things like that. So they are begging the FDA to take a step back, reconsider this data. And so let me see. So the question then is, why would NutraSweet, why would aspartame be a carcinogen? And this is the part you need to tell your friends. So NutraSweet is metabolized by your gut into 3 molecules: aspartic acid, don't worry about that; phenylalanine, not worried about that. What's the third one? Methanol, wood alcohol. And if you pay attention to the news, there are reports of lots of people die around the world every year because they are drinking wood alcohol, methanol. It's extremely toxic. And the FDA has issued several warnings for hand sanitizers in the COVID era that also contain methanol. And exposure to methanol is toxic. Okay, so that's one thing. But the next question is, what happens to the methanol? The methanol is broken down into formaldehyde. Formaldehyde. It's awful. We use formaldehyde to store animals, to store tissue. So formaldehyde is classified as a proven human carcinogen. So let's see. The International Agency of Research on Cancer and the National Toxicology Program classify formaldehyde as a known human carcinogen. So when you eat aspartame, you have to understand that aspartame is broken down into methanol, and that methanol is broken down into formaldehyde. And people exposed to formaldehyde at work, especially people who work in the funeral industry because they're preserving bodies for burial, we already know that they're at a much greater risk of developing leukemia. The more the exposure the person has, the greater the risk of cancer. And this is also found in textile workers. And we also know that formaldehyde is toxic because of wood products. And if you remember that lumber liquidators got some flooring made in China that off-gassed massive amounts of formaldehyde, and they ended up paying millions of dollars in fines because they lied about it. So we know formaldehyde in your home is also dangerous and damaging. And you're drinking it. You're drinking it. When you drink aspartame, you're basically the equivalent of drinking formaldehyde. It is broken down into formaldehyde. So they urge the FDA to review this latest research and issue a cancer warning on all aspartame-containing products, especially those consumed by children and pregnant women. Aspartame is obviously already on our IC caution list, and with this new data, it will certainly stay there. So I hope that you will help me raise awareness about this new research with aspartame, which really could help us understand why so many children are getting leukemia now. I mean, if you're eating something that's sugar-free, understand too, we already know that sugar-free products are more likely to become obese when you do sugar-free. And that's because when you put something super, super sweet in your mouth, and remember, artificial sugars are like 100 times sweeter than honey, your brain goes, ooh, energy coming, energy coming. And so your brain prepares your body to receive all of this energy that the sweetness would normally imply. Unfortunately, that energy never arrives. And when that energy doesn't arrive, your brain's going, hey, where's my energy? Where's my energy? I'm all prepared. Give it to me now. I want to go do stuff. And because the energy doesn't arrive, you graze. Your brain tells you, you better start snacking because I need that energy. And that's why people who do diet sodas are more likely to be obese than others, because it cheats your brain and your brain reacts by making you graze more. Okay. So anyway, over on our website, icnetwork.org, you can find that blog. I'm very proud of that. I wrote that this week. I think that this is a huge consumer alert. And guys, I'm just doing my little mini lecture here, and then I'll take your questions. So again, kind of getting back to our concept of the diversity in this patient population, we had a brand new paper that was just published. It's called Current Understanding and Future Perspectives of Interstitial Cystitis. And it appeared in the International Neurourology Journal. It was written by the top Japanese IC researcher, the top American researcher, Jane, and another American researcher. And here's something that I've never seen in a study before. This is fascinating. So they also are emphasizing subtyping, but they call it phenotyping. Okay, we are all clearly understanding here that there's depth and breadth in this patient population. They used a word I'd never seen before. So they say, thus, phenotyping IC, which is aimed at identifying bladder-centric or bladder beyond pathologies, is of paramount importance for the development of effective treatments. So I've never heard them I understand bladder centric. I've never heard them say bladder beyond pathologies, right? Outside of the bladder. So it's absolutely wonderful to see them doing that. And they are focusing on something that Japanese researchers were the first to identify. And so let me get a picture here. Hold on. So, again, we're all really trying to understand, for some of you, why is your bladder red, right? Why is your bladder red? And this is an example of what we call glomerations or petechial hemorrhaging, right? So a healthy bladder is white, which is normal blood vessels. This is still potentially a healthy bladder because we know that the test itself, when you stretch the bladder, you're tearing some of the skin in your bladder. And so a diagnosis of IC is no longer dependent upon the finding of what we call petechial hemorrhages or glomerations in the bladder. But the reality is that they do happen, like this one. That's a lot. The question is why? And the Japanese are focusing on why are these extraneous blood vessels, what's happening here? It's called angiogenesis. It means that that more blood vessels are growing. And so, although they admit in this article that this does not support a diagnosis of IC at all, that this is thrown out as a diagnosis of IC, as part of the diagnostic workup of IC, but they are wondering if this stuff could also be related to what happens to your bladder if it's chemically injured, if it's traumatized, or if it's some weird disease process they just don't understand, or chronic infection that may be chronic fungal infection, chronic viral infection, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I love the fact now that we've got mainstream journal articles that are emphasizing the diversity. They say clinical trials in all-inclusive populations of IC without phenotyping in the last decade have been unsuccessful. Why? Because you can't put apples, oranges, and pears in the same study. If you've got Hunter's lesions and you've got chemotherapy-induced IC and you've got pelvic floor tension and you've got tailbone injuries and then you've got the central sensitization patients all in the research study, it's going to fail. It's going to fail because it's not targeted. Because what works for one is not going to work for the other and vice versa, right? So anyway, that was cool. I enjoyed reading this paper. Let me see. I did lots of, let's see if there's something else in here. Okay. So in terms of diagnostics, this is under future perspectives. IC-BPS is part of a pelvic pain spectrum of disorders that can be caused by impairments in the urinary tract, the gynecologic tract, gastrointestinal systems. Therefore, evaluation of each organ is necessary. In addition, patients diagnosed with chronic prostatitis, IC has been reported as a comorbidity associated with decreases in, okay, anyway, you don't need to know that. Okay, but anyway, here again, they're saying, now listen, you gotta look beyond the bladder. We have to make sure we haven't missed something, right? A year ago, that study came out that showed that 70% of the men with testicular pain had an underlying hip problem. 70%. 70%. You can give them prostate therapies for years. They never get better because you got to fix the hip. You got to restore blood supply. You got to restore normal function in the pelvis. All right, so that's done. Also, let's just do the quick reminder here. Our new book, IC 101, not just a bladder disease. You guys, it's been selling like hotcakes. I'm really glad. I've gotten really, really good reviews. I haven't had anybody call and criticize me about it or send me an email. If you've already gotten this book and read it, I would love it if you could send me an email and tell me what you thought. So this is the book that introduces subtypes to you. It introduces the diversity to you. And it took us 2 years to do this. I wrote it with Gay and Andrew Sandler. And honestly, it is the book that we're now going to be recommending to everybody. Doesn't matter if you're newly diagnosed or a grizzled veteran. This is the one that will help you rule out all that other stuff before we start focusing on bladder-centric stuff. Okay, so let's see here. Spend any time in an IC bladder pain syndrome support group, and you'll quickly learn that there is remarkable diversity in the IC patient population. For some patients, urinary frequency, urgency, and pain began in childhood, while for others, it occurred after menopause. Chemotherapy or a very poor diet is a common trigger for patients at any age, but so is traumatic injury, such as fracturing your tailbone. Some patients struggle with chronic overlapping pain conditions like IBS, vulvodynia, fibromyalgia, while others just have bladder symptoms. They've all been diagnosed with IC, but are they the same? No, they're not. Some patients suffer with such extreme urinary frequency they cannot sleep at night, while others sleep for hours at a time without distress. Some struggle with intense pain, especially when they sit down, while others have no pain. Many patients experience a worsening of their symptoms after they drink coffee and cranberry, while others can eat and drink anything and not notice any change in their symptoms. Do they all have the same condition? Again, the answer is no. The variations are the most obvious when looking inside the bladder. A relatively small percentage of patients have large bleeding lesions on their bladder wall, while others have a perfectly normal looking bladder, like me. Yet both patients struggle with intense frequency, urgency, and pressure or pain. Clearly, they do not have the same condition. IC has essentially become a grab bag diagnosis for patients with urinary symptoms for which an obvious cause has not been found. Today, we no longer think of IC as an incurable disease of the bladder, but rather as a chronic pelvic pain syndrome. Why? Because structures outside of the bladder, such as muscles, organs, and nerves, can also trigger the urinary symptoms of frequency, urgency, pressure, and pain. All right. So that's the first section of chapter 1. So if you'd like to get this book, come on over to our website, IC Network. I haven't put it on Amazon yet. I've just been too busy, but it will be on Amazon soon. But you can get it right now on our website. We're down to like our last 20, but I'll be ordering another couple hundred tomorrow. Oh, and tomorrow's my birthday. It's so weird. Like, it's so weird. You know, last year was a big birthday for me. We didn't do anything. And now this year I'll be 61. How the hell did that happen? I still feel 25. It's so freaking weird. All right. And then last but not least, in the IC Network store, I just want to announce that we've just gotten a brand new supply of low acid jams and jellies from Colorado Mountain Jams and Jellies. You can do blueberry, blackberry, apple, and the pear is coming in, and plum. So if you're looking for something sweet that you can have on your toast, over in our store, bam, we got low acid jams and jellies. Are false positives common for people who have UTI? Potentially. False positives are extremely common with dipstick tests. Oh, you guys, thank you for your birthday wishes. It's so weird. Thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. I'm not in a birthday mood this year. You know, we've got the Delta variant here, so I'm not doing anything. I can't risk my parents. I can't do it. But, you know, we'll celebrate again. And thank you for your words. Okay, so it's time for your questions. So you guys, I've got questions on Facebook and I got questions on YouTube. So let's go to Facebook first because I am obviously 30 minutes behind because I just talked for 30 minutes. Somebody wanted to know how to use a wand. A wand is, for those of you who don't know, if you're diagnosed with pelvic floor tension, it's very important that you understand that the least important part of your therapy is going to the physical therapist, although it's important. The most important part of their physical therapy is what you do when you get home, when you start feeling your muscles get tight. And so these are the ones that I recommend. This is Easy Magic by IC Relief. And this is what you use internally if you have a trigger point or something. When my muscles start to get tight, you know, the way I know is when I try to pee, my stream is very slow, or kind of there's kind of a pulling sensation also. The direct way for you to tell if your pelvic floor is starting to freak out and starting to get tight again, let's say you've taken a long car ride or you've been sitting for a long period of time, that's when you need to get out your wand and do the work you need to do to get your muscles to relax. And so, ow. All right, let me just show you why this wand is so important. So I had a father of a daughter call me this week, and he was furious that his daughter needed to have internal pelvic floor work. And I think she had fallen really, really badly. And he thought that she was being abused. And he called me. We had a very, very delicate conversation. Let me tell you, a very, very careful, delicate conversation, because, man, he is suing his ex-wife and yada, yada, yada. And it is not pretty. And, you know, he said, but don't you agree this is abuse? And I went, no, absolutely not. I mean, because you have to understand that the pelvic floor muscles are basically inside of bony structures. You can't really access these muscles externally. And he goes, but they should have done external work. And I said, it's impossible, because these muscles are on the inside of the hip bones. You cannot reach them. And, you know, he was just insanely angry about the whole thing. And he said, Well, I think this is abuse. I'm suing everybody. And it's like, he goes, well, I mean, the last thing he said to me was something like, I don't see how this can't be abuse. Why would you do this? And I basically said, listen, my symptoms started in 7th grade. I'd broken my tailbone. And in 7th grade, they thought I had a bladder infection. I took antibiotics for years. Then I got all the related conditions to it. And then I finally ended up with, IBS, vulvodynia, all that sort of stuff. All now in hindsight, we think it's related to that early injury I had. And I said, dude, I suffered for decades before I was diagnosed correctly. And if I could go back and see the 13-year-old Jill Osborne and say, hey, did you break your tailbone? Yeah, I did. I can move it around. Okay, well, let's look at your muscles. If they could have fixed it back then with internal pelvic floor therapy, I would have done it in a heartbeat. I wouldn't have understood it, but anyway, let's just say it was a very awkward conversation. Now, let's not assume that you're a teenager. Let's assume you're older. You're feeling like your muscles are getting super, super tight. And when these muscles get tight, what happens is they lift off of the bone. And you've got stuff in here. You've got your bladder, you've got your uterus, you've got nerves, blood vessels, et cetera, et cetera. And so what happens is when these get tight, they lift and they start compromising other structures. So our goal here is to get them to flatten back down and go where they're supposed to be, right on the muscles. And so you can look with my finger, you might be able to go maybe this far, not too far, maybe this far. But with a wand, you can go much farther in. See that? Look at that. I can go all the way to where my problem is, with piriformis muscles and things like that. And so that's why using a wand is incredibly helpful. And I know the pelvic floor physical therapy is freaky for a lot of you. It's like, I don't want somebody's fingers in there down there. Come on, that's weird. I don't want somebody touching my muscles down there. Guys, listen. There's no oral therapy that's going to restore blood supply. There's no oral therapy or bladder installation that's going to make your muscles relax. As long as you have tight muscles, you're screwed. The pelvic floor muscles, specifically the levator ani, are the only muscles in the human body involved with key bodily functions. And if you look at it this way, let me put the lowest. So these are your lowest level of muscles right here, right? It has 3 holes in it for your rectum, for your vagina, and for your urethra. But if these muscles right here are tight, it's going to squeeze them and you're not going to be able to pee. You're going to have a hard time peeing. It's going to feel like you're peeing through a needle. It's going to be hard to let stool pass through because you're not going to be able to get your muscles to relax to have a normal bowel movement. And sex is very hard. It's hard to let something inside there as a woman when your muscles are tight. It's going to hurt. And there is a condition called vaginismus, tight pelvic floor muscles, that some women get. It starts in their teenage years and they've never had comfortable sex. Their entire life it's hurt. And it's hurt because of an original pelvic floor injury that was never correctly diagnosed. But we know that muscles respond beautifully to muscle therapy. I've had 4 rounds of pelvic floor physical therapy. It's been fabulous for me. I do not live with the pain that I used to have anymore. And I can now understand the difference between a bladder wall flare and a pelvic floor flare. It's subtly different. But that flare you get after intimacy, that's your muscles. That's not your bladder. Even though your bladder feels weird, it's really caused by your muscles. All right? All right. All right. Now with Facebook, it doesn't let me scroll back. So frustrating. Teresa says she has Hunner's. Okay, so Hunner's lesions require lesion-specific therapy. That means they're going to either inject them with a steroid, or they're going to cauterize them, or laser therapy them, or hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or Lyris if it were available. So come on over to our website, icnetwork.org, and you can learn more about that. Deborah says, my thyroid medicines are off again, taking too much because I've lost weight. My bladder's calmed way down ever since. This happened 2 years ago. I tried to discuss it with my endocrinologist and he doesn't get it. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting that there are, a group of us who do have thyroid issues. I'm one of those. I was diagnosed with low thyroid when I was like 20 or 21. Every woman in my family is low thyroid. Every woman in my family has hypersensitive skin and all that sort of stuff. I don't know if we know. Who would, I bet, have an answer for that? Where is it? Where is my book? Two of my books have wandered. Where is it? The book you want to look for is Facing Pelvic Pain. It's free on Kindle Unlimited. It's edited by Dr. Elise Day of Harvard Medical School. And that is the book that reviews all of the other conditions that can trigger pelvic pain in IC. And there's a chapter from endocrinology. Where is it? My office gets crazy. It's here somewhere. Anyway, Facing Pelvic Pain. I've talked about it in other meetings. All right. Teresa says, does anybody know of a physical therapist in Charlotte, North Carolina? Look at Wake Forest. Check our database on our website, our Find It MD database. Jessica says, I have a herniated disc on top of my IC and pelvic floor. Me too. We are all in this together. I don't know what caused my IC. I think it was mainly because of me having so many UTIs growing up. So Jessica, I too thought I had a lot of UTIs growing up because, and God forbid, we took a lot of antibiotics back then and we had a lot of urethral dilations back then. Understand that the only language that the bladder can use to tell you that there's a problem is through the symptoms of frequency, urgency, pressure, pain. So you could have a bullet wound and it would feel like a UTI. You can have a stab wound and it would feel like a UTI. That's the only way that the bladder can communicate that there were problems. So I know you think you had a lot of UTIs growing up, but I bet you good money that a lot of them were negative cultures. There was a research study that studied, I think, like 40 women who had been on antibiotics for 10 years. And they went back and they looked in their medical records. And out of those 40 women, only 1 or 2 actually had positive cultures. The rest had no bacteria found. And again, we're thinking muscle, we're thinking fibroid tumors, anything else that can be putting pressure on the bladder. And says, how would you know if you need an installation? Well, I mean, if you're flaring, if you're having a very clear bladder wall flare, let's just say that you traveled and you ate a lot of food you shouldn't have eaten. And by the time you've gotten home, your bladder's screaming in pain. That's really when having a rescue installation, heparin lidocaine, might actually be helpful because it calms the superficial nerves in the bladder wall. And it gives you a little bit of a protective coating there too. As Jessica says here, I had 4 bladder installations. They helped me. It decreased my pain, but it only lasts for so long. Right. Bev says installations work for just 1 or 2 days. Why? Because, honey, nothing happens in 1 or 2 days in the bladder. Nothing. The bladder is the slowest healing organ in the human body. It takes 2 weeks for 1 cell to be replaced. So you have to be, You cannot assume that a installation is going to fix or heal your bladder. It's not. What it's going to do is maybe calm some of the symptoms. But when it comes to healing your bladder, this is about creating an environment that will support healing. That means you don't pour acid on the wound every day. That means that we restore good blood supply. It means that we try to find the cause rather than the effect. And so installations treat the effect. Installations treat the symptoms, but it does nothing for causation. What it might do is over time, a protocol for rescue installation, at least the first published protocol was a rescue. You do 3 rescues for a week for 2 weeks. So 6 installations for 2 weeks. And basically what you're doing is you're just turning the nerves off. You're just slamming those nerves off. And the goal there is to hope that the nerve will calm down every subsequent time that you do that, because for some of us, the nerves get super, super, super irritated. And so when you numb it, you're just stabilizing it for a bit. And so you keep numbing it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then hopefully you've got a good response to that. And then you can do 1 a week for 4 weeks to try to keep it calm. But again, we have to try to understand what's triggered that nerve in the first place, right? Veronica says, when I go to the gynecologist for my yearly, she always tells me that I'm extremely tight. Does that mean you have pelvic floor dysfunction? Hell yeah, absolutely. You have pelvic floor dysfunction. We call that hypertonic pelvic floor muscles. And you need to be doing something about that, Veronica. Jessica says, I had a urologist ask me if I wanted Elmeron, told her a solid no. I didn't go into it with her. She didn't ask either. Yeah, there was another research study, not a research study. It was a guy who was just assessing Elmeron effectiveness from a number of research studies, and he recommended it. He didn't say anything about the pigmentary maculopathy. I was stunned. He's from another country, so. Callie says, I have Botox injections in my bladder. Normally they help a lot, but I had it 2 weeks before having a laparoscopic, a hysterectomy, and my bladder hurts less in a month after. Yeah, but honey, the hysterectomy is brutal. It's brutal. Hysterectomies are not little easy surgeries. Hysterectomies are literally the hardest surgery you can give to a woman. You're pulling out her bits, and there are consequences to that. I mean, and again, if you think about this is speaking as somebody who's had one. Oh, and I saw a picture today of a lady who's 62 and pregnant, and I was just like, oh, if I could still have my bits and get pregnant even at 60, I would have done it. All right, so let us ponder a little bit about what happens here. So here you go. So here's your pelvic cavity, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put in our, oops, I got it backwards, vagina and uterus and fallopian tubes, right? And ovaries. Bam, in. Then I'm going to stick in the bladder. So look, you can see now why for bladder pain, you get pain right above your pubic bone, right? And then we got to stick in the bowel. And you can, whoops, bladder fell out. You can see that kind of slides in and under. All right, come here, bladder. Get back here. So when they do a hysterectomy, they have a lot of obstacles. So the common hysterectomy done now is called a laparoscopic assisted total vaginal hysterectomy. So rather than making an incision on your belly, either up and down or side to side, what they do instead is they go in through your vagina. But they do, it's a laparoscopic assisted. So what that means is they're going to have You're going to have 3 incisions on your belly, and they stick a light through there. They stick cameras through there, and they stick a device through there. And so what they do is from the front, they go in and they start cauterizing blood vessels and dealing with tendon, anything that is attached to the uterus, right? So they detach all of those. And then what they do is they make an incision up to kind of show you, okay, so look, the vagina is in place. They make an incision right here along the top of the vagina, and then they go up the vagina and they grab this stuff and they pull it out of the body through the vagina. And that's really considered the safest way of doing it, because then you're not doing any major incisions that could compromise nerves or blood vessels or things like that. So the laparoscopic assisted or the Da Vinci method is considered the safest. But, number one, it's big. Number two, like for me, when they did it, they actually tore my vagina because apparently I was too big up here. Go figure. So when you have this surgery, okay, bam, this is gone. But we still have the bladder, and we still have the bowel, right? But now what we've got are adhesions and scar tissue. And so, recovering from hysterectomy it's tough. They're not lying when they say it's going to be a year before you feel normal again. It took a year for me before I really felt normal again. All right, let me go. Come on. All right, my friends on YouTube, I'm sorry. I'm going to come to your questions now, and then we're going to come back to Facebook. Elise says, the urologist at my local hospital suggested that I start with Elmeron this week. I said, no, thank you. Yeah, good. Glad you did that. Donna says she's celebrating my birthday tomorrow. Thank you, hon. Thank you. You're going to do something healing and new. I love it. All right. Well, you guys on Facebook, on YouTube, you're quiet. Come on, hit me up. Give me a tough question. I love tough questions. All right. Kayleen says, loves installations. I get one every month. And I've only had one UTI from one. My urologist and his nurses are so considerate. That's wonderful. Kelly says, I wonder if aspartame causes IC. I had aspartame poisoning before I was diagnosed with IC. I don't see how it couldn't, because in that metabolic breakdown, in addition to methanol being broken down into formaldehyde, it's also broken down into formic acid. And formic acid is a very, very strong acid. I think that it goes from methanol to formic acid to formaldehyde. Jessica says, I've heard that there are so many causes for IC. Some say it's a bladder injury from a car accident, autoimmune disease, sexual trauma, UTIs. I wonder if IC can be caused by many different things. It is caused by many different things, hon. This is what we call a heterogeneous patient population. You're not the same. Everybody's different. We also call this the snowflake principle. You're all snowflakes. No snowflake is the same. We're all uniquely different. Jessica says, has anybody had luck with horsetail for relief? I have no idea. Anybody out there, please let me know. Put in a comment in there if you've ever used horsetail and if it's helped. I've never heard of it. What we generally do is chamomile, peppermint, marshmallow root. Oh, and we got more marshmallow. Oh, wait a second. Hold on a sec. I know that we were waiting for months for our marshmallow root. Let me see if they put it back in stock. Yes, they did. Woohoo! Okay, so you can get marshmallow root now from our website. We haven't had it in 6 months. It's very, very popular. It's very soothing. So our top 3 herbal teas or products are going to be chamomile, peppermint, or marshmallow root. And you can do marshmallow root tea, or you can do marshmallow root capsules. Understand though that some people react to marshmallow root, so it's not a guarantee. Chamomile, peppermint are solid. Marshmallow root is kind of another step down because it can irritate some people. It's not common, but a lot of you love marshmallow root and some of you don't. You got so the marshmallow root is very inexpensive. It's under $15 if you wanted to try it. I had to beg, borrow, and plead for that. You guys understand manufacturing is a mess. It doesn't matter what it is. Supplement industry is holy hell. 4 to 5 to 6 month delays for everything. And they literally can't get ingredients right now. So I'm placing orders 5 months ahead of time right now so that we can have product. It's really bad. And it's affecting coffee. It's affecting everything. Teresa says, is there any truth to it's caused by past trauma? Absolutely. 100%, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. We absolutely know that trauma to the pelvic floor, like falling, breaking your tailbone, absolutely can create the foundation for IC. Just like falling off a horse can leave scar tissue in your pelvic floor that can eventually give you bladder symptoms. So it is all due to that original trauma. Joanna, thank you so much for the 200 stars. You're a sweetie pie. Thank you so much. Michelle says, are false negatives common when you test for UTI? Well, that's quite controversial. Dipstick tests are notorious for false positives or false negatives. You have to know how to read a dipstick test. Dipstick test for leukocytes and nitrites. If you have a double positive leukocyte and nitrite, you need to go get a urine culture because that nitrites are only produced by bacteria, pathogenic bacteria. But if you only have leukocytes, that just basically means that your bladder wall is irritated by something. So that can happen because, you did something you shouldn't have done if you're IC subtype 1 or IC subtype 2. Thank you guys for your birthday wishes. Callie says her husband's birthday is tomorrow. So is David Stuckey's. David Stuckey's, who I went to junior high with. They gave us a statistical bet in our class that one of us would share a birthday, and I share a birthday with David Stuckey. I love seeing all the kids the now adults, the kids we went to elementary school with. It's very fun. Arakme says, ask how I'm doing. I'm good. I'm feeling good. I'm not tired right now, I'm feeling, I think what I'm dealing with most is TMJ. And my muscles, I feel my muscles get tight and then weak and then tight and then weak. And I'm really having to be diligent with my pelvic floor. But Arakme says the heparin infusions are working beautifully. Awesome. Callie says, so if I injured my tailbone, could that have caused my IC? Yes, it could have. And if you want the full academic explanation, let me give it to you. So when you break your tailbone, and let's come back to our handy dandy model here. So here's your tailbone right there. And I want you to notice that it curves under. It curves under, right? So think about a dog whose tail is between their legs. That's the normal structure of the bone. The bone goes like this, right? If you have broken your tailbone, your tailbone may have lost its curve. It may be sticking out straight, or it may be sticking to the left or to the right. So now I want you to look at everything that's attached to the tailbone, right? So look at the attachments here. There's a lot of muscles, There are a lot of muscles and other tissue as well as bones that are very involved here. So if you've got a tailbone that's over to the side, you're now tweaking the muscle on that side. The muscle on the opposite side is maybe being stretched a little bit too far, and the muscle on this side might be contracted too far. So now we've got instability and imbalance in the pelvic floor muscles, that they're not even on both sides, tight on one side, loose on the other side. Then we get into the long-term effects of chronic pelvic floor tension. So we've got diminished blood supply, because all the blood vessels that go through those muscles are now being squeezed. We've got poor oxygenation. We've got ischemia. So those tissues are being deprived of normal oxygen. So if your bladder normally gets 24 to 28 units of blood a day, and it's only getting 10 units of blood because you've got this tight pelvic floor, that's going to be very, very hard for your bladder to be healthy. Plus, then we have something called the somatovisceral reflex, and that is, can muscles change organ behavior? And the answer is absolutely. If you deprive these tissues of blood supply, you're also depriving the nerves of blood supply, and nerves that don't have good blood supply become dysfunctional. And because all these nerves end up at the same place in this area, so all the nerves from your bladder and your vulva and everything all merge right in this area. And we have something called neurocrosstalk, where one nerve is dysfunctional. Guess what? The other nerves nearby get dysfunctional. So now we're dealing with nerve dysfunction that maybe started here, it's moved up the nerve here, and it's moved back down to the nerve by your bladder. That's called the somatovisceral reflex. And so, nothing operates in isolation in the pelvis. They influence each other. And that's where Western medicine fails, is doctors stay in their sandbox. Urologists stay in the bladder, gynecologists stay in the reproductive tract, gastroenterologists stay in the gut, and they forget relationships. And it's impossible for anything to operate in isolation. They influence each other tremendously. So, as an example, if you have a fibroid tumor pushing forward, pushing into your bladder, and you can see how easy that would be, because you can see that the bladder is right next to the uterus. So if you've got a mass that's pushing against your bladder, yeah, that's going to cause problems. That's going to cause problems. Also, if you're constipated or you have megacolon, you're very constipated, you've got something that we call packing down there, where there's a lot of stool sitting in your lower colon. That also is going to push against your bladder. It's going to push against your muscles. It's going to irritate everything. And that's why being constipated is a trigger for IC. It's so annoying. I mean, I swear, as we get older, it becomes more and more challenging to have the perfect poop. I have no shame. I will talk about anything. There's a wonderful podcast called, it's by Dr. Jennifer Gunter, the author of the Menopause Manifesto and the Vagina Bible. And it's called Body Stuff. And it's produced by TED Talks. And she has an episode on poop, and it's hysterical. So if you have podcasts, search for Body Stuff and listen to her podcast on bowel movements, and listen to her podcast on how much water you're supposed to drink. And she did a great podcast on why detoxes are so incredibly harmful. You should never do a detox. It's going to destroy good bacteria, et cetera, et cetera. So Body Stuff by Dr. Jen Gunter, you will laugh. She is funny. She's so funny. Elise says, do you know if vaginal estrogen can increase the chance of getting a bacterial UTI? I don't think so. What vaginal estrogen will do is give that skin the estrogen it needs to produce that nice thick coating of mucus. And that will help your skin protect itself from bacteria. You have to understand, Elise, that as we get older, in addition to our skin changing because of the loss of estrogen, our pH changes. And the pH in the vagina then becomes more conducive to bacterial infections also. So, if you can, I can't tell how old you are. That book, The Menopause Manifesto, is fantastic and talks about how menopause affects the urinary tract. Peaceful Abundance. Girl, I love your username. Isn't that wonderful? Talk about good mind body medicine right there. I have endometrial hyperplasia with polyps. I've had 3 scrapings in the last few years. To me, this is the root cause of my IC issues. You're trying to avoid hysterectomy. I'm 57, going to try the progesterone IUD. So I had hyperplasia too, along with polyps. I started spotting, and the spotting was like pale pink lemonade. Like, it's so minor. It's just like, this is fine. It wasn't bloody. It was just pink. But what happened over a period of 6 months, it got darker and darker and darker until finally, I was passing blood clots. And that's when they went in and they found that I had complex endometrial hyperplasia. And complex, there are simple cells and complex cells. And the complex cells are the cells that can become cancer cells. And so, we tried the progesterone to force a period. It didn't work. My endometrial hyperplasia got thicker and thicker and thicker. When they measure your endometrium, normal is like 4. Mine was like 8. And then after 3 months of progesterone, it was like 10. And the doctor, did the biopsy, and, the hysterectomy happened. Rhonda said, starting physical therapy in September, my OBGYN examined me. My muscles are very tight and sore. Good, girl. And you're going to Elizabeth Christouris. Good. Give it a shot. Understand, when you go to PT, now listen, there's something called the hallelujah moment with physical therapy. At your first appointment, they're supposed to evaluate your muscles. They're going to touch your muscles, just try to figure out which ones are tight, which ones are normal. If they can touch a muscle and trigger your pain, that is what I call your hallelujah moment. That is extremely exciting. And you need to say, oh my God, that's it. What are you touching? And I want you to be able to walk out of that first appointment knowing, is it your piriformis, your obturator, your levator, wherever? We want to know which muscle is the problem. And so don't be afraid of pain. The pain is exciting when you go to physical therapy the first time, because it means, oh my God, you touched it. You found it. Ooh, yeah, God, please. What are you touching? What are you touching? And it's so wonderful for them to actually find it, that you should walk out of that appointment very, very hopeful. But now you're in for the work, because the odds are that it's been tight for years, and 1 or 2 physical therapy appointments are not going to fix it over time. Then there may be other issues involved, like having a bad leg, one leg longer than the other, something like that, which is reinforcing pelvic floor tension. Peaceful Abundance said, I bleed so much, huge clots, it all but stopped my internal therapy. Honey, I got to that point, and I mean, have you had a DNC? Did they do a DNC yet and really take tissue? Rhonda says it would be nice to have support before while getting PT. I don't know any kind of support to help with that. Well, it's really about your knowledge level, Rhonda. The more you know about those muscles and the structures down there, the more control you have and the more confidence you will have when you walk in. I would really love for you to be able to walk into that office, laying on your back, they're working on you, and with you being able to visualize what they're working on. And we have this fabulous book, Breaking Through Chronic Pelvic Pain by Dr. Jerome Weiss, which is the master class in pelvic floor. And that book is free on Kindle Unlimited. So no excuses. It's freaking free. So if you got an iPad, go over to Amazon, sign up for Kindle Unlimited. The first 30 days are free. Download that book and read that book. If you read that book, you will walk in full a partner in your care. It will change how you work with your physical therapist for the better. I mean, it's so incredibly important for you to walk in knowing what they're doing. Okay, so you had the DNC. So what were the biopsy results of the DNC? Did you have complex or did you have simple endometrial hyperplasia? Did they differentiate that for you? Uh-oh, hold on. Our frame rate is too low on Facebook. Are you guys okay on Facebook? Joan says, how do I find out where I would go for physical therapy? Talk to your OBGYN. We have a database on our website called Find a Provider that lists physical therapists. You can search by zip code. I also have another database from Harvard that they gave me. Okay, so honey, peaceful. Just between you and me right now. Now listen, you have complex endometrial hyperplasia and you are bleeding profusely. Huge clots, as you say. You know, this is action time. This is action time. You know, when I got that diagnosis, okay, so when I had my DNC and they gave me the diagnosis, so they found the complex endometrial hyperplasia, which is not a good sign because those cells can easily become cancer cells. They sent my biopsy results off to Stanford University, and Stanford looked at them and they added with a vague architectural complex to my diagnosis. So my diagnosis was complex endometrial hyperplasia with a vague architectural complex, so what did that mean? It meant it was starting to build cancer. Okay. They were starting that change into cancer. We caught it exactly the right time. And we knew exactly what had to happen to save my life. And that was to have a hysterectomy. So I understand your reluctance to do that. My number one concern for me was I didn't want it to affect my IC. I mean, my bladder pain had been fantastic for 10 years. And I told the doctor, I said, I don't care about the cancer. Just don't set me back 10 years with my IC because I don't live with pain anymore. And it was the only time that I'd ever asked our medical board for personal advice. I sent them all my results, top doctors in the nation. And I said, what would you do? This is what they found. What would you do? Every single one of them said, your life is at stake. It is time for you, Jill Osborne, to have a hysterectomy. No hesitation. Your endometrium was growing. My endometrium was getting thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker, and progesterone therapy did nothing. So, you know, you're at that edge, hun. You're at that edge. Do I regret having it? No, not at all, because I believe that it saved my life. My regret is that I lost my ability to have children, and I lost one baby very young, and I hadn't had children. And I think that was the agony of having a hysterectomy for me. It's just, and it kicked in like month 3, you know, where I just kind of started crying for that. And I cried for a couple of months. But I don't regret it at all. I don't regret it at all because I do believe that it saved my life. And I asked the doctor, I said, why me? Nobody else in my family, you know, had ever had a hormone-driven cancer. You know, leave it to me to be the special one. And I asked the doctor, I said, listen, my mom's taken estrogen for years. She's fine. We have no history of breast cancer, uterine cancer, cervical cancer, ovarian cancer in our family. Why me? And he goes, because it's not genetic. We don't even look at genetics anymore. It just means you've got the cells that get turned on. and I had the cells that got turned on. So, girl, if you want to talk, I'd love to talk with you and kind of share my experience and maybe give you some of the benchmarks. The website that I found stunningly helpful was Hister Sisters, histersisters.com. I just put it in your chat. It's a massive community of women that are considering hysterectomy or going through hysterectomy or recovering. And you will find many, many other women, thousands of women who are exactly where you are right now. Okay. You have, where they're trying to navigate that decision too. And so go on over to History Sisters and they might give you a little bit more context and a few more patient stories. Yeah. And then I have a video on my story on YouTube. I will leave you with this. I think we waited too long. I didn't take the first biopsy seriously. I delayed having a biopsy for, I started bleeding in August. I didn't have my biopsy until December, my first biopsy. And then I didn't have my DNC until April because we did progesterone for from January through March. And it was just starting to build tumors. So if we'd waited another, 3 to 4 months, it could have been a much worse outcome for me, much worse. So, take it as you see it. If you can, go watch my video on YouTube. You're on YouTube already. Just search for hysterectomy in my area, and you can hear my whole story there. All right. All right. So, guys, normally we start our Zoom portion of the meeting, and so I would like to do that because we did not do that last week. So hold on one sec. Give me a moment. And so in our Zoom portion of the meeting, you can come into Zoom directly and ask me questions. If nobody wants to do it, that's fine. I got no sweat in this game. You just want to answer questions through chatting. I'm fine with that. But let's just see if anybody wants to Zoom. So the way you get in there is, well, I'm gonna give you your link. You can go to our main website, icnetwork.org. Click on the support. Underneath our new logo, we have a brand new logo. Hope you like it. Underneath our support pull-down menu, just click on streamed support group meetings. And there's my picture with curly hair. And you'll see the link into the Zoom meeting. And let me just open it up, and then I will also put links in chat. No, I am the host of this meeting. There. Hold on. Oh, am I not signed in? Maybe that's the problem. Hold on. Hold on a moment. What is going on here with my Zoom meeting? I am the host. Don't tell me I have to wait for the host to sign. Hold on. Hold on. Let me see if I wrote down my password. I have of course, I did not write down my password. And let's try it this way. There we go. Woo! Life, right? All right. The Zoom meeting is now started. And holy moly, my makeup has melted off my face. That's not pretty. All right, so I'm going to give you guys on Zoom, on YouTube, there's your link. All right, and on Facebook, hold on, Facebook. Oh, I just have to hide this part of my face so you don't see it. All right, hold on a sec. All right, Facebook, here is your link. Oh, crap. Okay, you got a lot of good questions in here. I might lose. Hopefully I won't lose them. Nora says she had everything removed because her mother died. You had everything removed at 47. All right, Facebook, there you go. Whoops, there you go. There's your invite. All right, guys, it's time for a quick potty break. Hey, the great thing about attending a support group meeting online from home is you can get up and go to the bathroom whenever you need to, right? It's awesome. So I need to go to the bathroom. So let's just take a quick break here. Be right back in a minute, maybe even sooner, because I can pee very fast when my pelvic floor is not tight. All right, if anybody wants to come into Zoom, it's open. If you don't, that's fine. I got no sweat in this game. Okay, I'll be right back. All righty. So on my scale, that means that my pelvic floor was just a wee bit tight. Anybody have this by chance? This stuff, Mario Badescu facial spray with aloe. Awesome. Oh, so good. All right. I think we're at the ponytail stage in the day. Let's see. All right. If nobody wants to Zoom, that's fine with me. I will shut that down. We will just go back to your questions. Okay. I'll leave it open for a little bit. Oh, Heggy, thank you for the stars, for 310 stars. Kelly, thank you for 490 stars. Holy moly, you guys are being very generous. Thank you so, so much. All right. Oh, I can scroll back. It's a miracle. All right. So hold on. What's that? You guys have good questions on Facebook. Callie says she's never heard of subtypes before. Let me go through questions, and maybe at the end I can do our slideshow and I can talk to you about those if you still want me to do that. Maya says, how do you know if it's nerve entrapment or IC? Okay, so pudendal nerve entrapment is IC subtype 4. So again, IC subtype 1, Hunner's lesions, IC subtype 2, bladder wall driven. And in that subtype, we've got 4 subtypes. IC subtype 3, pelvic floor driven, IC subtype 4, pudendal neuralgia, IC subtype 5, central sensitization, chronic overlapping pain conditions. And basically what that means is that we have a central nervous system sensitivity disorder. And so our therapies, you can do bladder therapies. Okay, I'm shutting down Zoom. That'll make it everything easier for me. So if you've got chronic overlapping pain conditions, that tells us that your central nervous system is involved, like my central nervous system is involved. So if you got IC, IBS, vulvodynia, fibromyalgia, TMJ, etc., that's a whole central nervous system issue. And we have to do very different strategies for that, but they're very, very effective. So how do you know if you've got pudendal neuralgia? You're having nerve-driven pain. You have pain when you sit down that is relieved by standing up. You might have sciatica. You might have persistent genital arousal disorder where you feel like this kind of like you're kind of aroused, but it's really painful and incredibly creepy and disgusting. I know that because I had it for about a month. Or you might have a pins and needles sensation on your skin, on your vulva, by your perineum, by your rectum, etc. Those are clear signs that we have nerve involvement. But if you've got sciatica, that's a perfect example of nerves that are being compressed by tight pelvic floor muscles. Rhonda says, how can I get IC 101 for my urogyne? And Elizabeth Kusturis, honey, if you call me, you might be able to give me, I have about a dozen copies that I'm saving for doctors. I might be able to just send them a comp copy. And if I can't do that, I'll give it to you for exactly how much it costs to print it up, which is $17. It costs $17 to print one book up, and we're selling the books for $24.95. And I'm splitting that with Gay and Andrew. So it's not like this is a big money-making opportunity here. It's really about giving you the newest, latest information. DJ, girl, I love the way you explain this. She said, if sex is hard for you, then the dilator may help. It is basically like the little Russian dolls that start very small, and you can make it bigger and bigger based on your body. It's very similar. That's very cool. Veronica says, I'm extremely fatigued all the time. All my tests for UTIs come back negative, but I always have a trace or more of blood. Could the amount of blood pee daily cause fatigue? I doubt it. I doubt it. You know, I would really be looking potentially at, I would be looking at a couple of different things. I mean, hopefully you're already working with your doctor and you can ask your doctor for some of this information. I would want to, number one, I would want to have a thyroid test. And let's see where your thyroid function is. Because if your thyroid function is low, you get tired and sleepy. If your thyroid function is high, and if your thyroid function is low, you gain weight. So that's hypothyroidism. If you're hyperthyroid, you get wired and you lose weight. So the first thing I would want to know is what's going on with your thyroid. The second thing I would want to know is I would want to have a B12, vitamin B12 and a vitamin D test, because we're finding that many women as they get older become incredibly deficient in B12 and D. And if you're deficient in B12, it's all about the energy. I also find that I get more pins and needles in my skin when I'm deficient in D3, which is interesting. So they found that I was low in both, like when I was 48, like 12 years ago. And I find that taking the extra supplementation for that to be particularly helpful for me. I used to have a lot of trouble waking up in the morning, and I used to deal with a lot of fatigue throughout the day. And now the only time I get fatigued during the day is if I eat carbs, if I eat too many carbs. If I put syrup on my gluten-free pancakes, the total mistake. I will be tired. Where is it? We have, so when you've got estrogen atrophy or chemical injury to your bladder wall is very vulnerable to acid. And one of our biggest triggers is multivitamins. Absolute multivitamins. Terrible. I've had terrible flares from those. So we make we asked this company to make a low acid multivitamin for us. This is called Bladder Smart, and it's a low acid formula. And this stuff is the bomb. I take 2. You can take up to 3 a day. I take 2 at night before I go to bed on an empty stomach, and it still doesn't flare my bladder. So if you're looking for a low acid vitamin, this is important. I've got a new dietitian who we're working with who's also doing a story for us on vitamin deficiencies, because so many IC patients are afraid to eat, and then you stop eating, or you're down to eating 4 to 5 foods like I was early on. I can eat tons more food now that my muscles are healthy and now that my bladder is healthy. But back before, when it started, I was pretty food restricted too. And we're kind of just looking at the long-term toll of that on the body and what that's doing with respect to normal good nutrition. And so if you're just not eating well and you feel like you need a little bit more, maybe something like Bladder Smart might work for you. Talk to your doctor and see what your doctor thinks. The reason why this is a low acid formula is because the calcium in it is from calcium glycerophosphate, which happens to be the active ingredient in pre-leaf. So it actually has an acid reducing calcium in this. Also too, pre-leaf, I've worked, obviously, you can tell pre-leaf sponsors these meetings. They were just now allowed to call their product a medical food. It is the only medical food that applies to interstitial cystitis. It is a #1 recommended supplement for patients looking for a dietary management of IC. And so pre-leaf is viable too. All righty. Honey, the only way you could be anemic is if you're peeing blood clots. If you're peeing tons of blood clots, then yeah, you could certainly become anemic. But if you have microscopic blood in your urine when they test it, but you don't see pink urine or red urine or blood clots in your urine, then you're not losing a lot of blood. But talk to your doctor and see what your doctor says. You guys remember, I can't give you medical advice here. My job is to educate you and send you back to your doctor with questions. Bev says, I've had 5 emergency surgeries for abdominal adhesions. The last one took 6 hours. Holy crap. The last one took 6 hours. The gynecologist couldn't find my bladder. She called in a general surgeon and a urologist to help cut the adhesions out. Could I have adhesions again? Wow. Holy crap. Do we know what those adhesions are from? Did it start out as endometriosis, Bev? Wow. Hun, you guys, my email address is icnetwork@mac, like Macintosh computer. So icnetwork@mac.com. Don't put your email address in chat because you're showing it to everybody. If you need to reach me, email me, icnetwork@mac.com. So adhesions are basically scar tissue. Every time you have surgery, wherever you were cut, you have the chance of developing adhesions. I have adhesions now from my hysterectomy. But it's stunning that they couldn't find your bladder. Holy crap. Did they give you pictures? Boy, I'd sure love to see the pictures of that. I'd love to talk to you, Bev. I hope you'll call me this week. Arakmi says, at a young age, I remember doctors putting several long rods of some kind in my urethra and pouring some sort of acid in me. I have no idea. They called it stretching the, yeah, hun, that's a urethral dilation. And what they do, they call them sounds. They put metal, slowly increasing in size, hollow rods directly into your urethra to stretch the urethra. That's what they did back then. I had that easily 100 times. I had it every week, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. Before I finally stopped doing it. We don't do that anymore. Now we ask ourselves, why is the urethra narrow? And the answer comes right back to pelvic floor. That as long as that pelvic floor is tight, it's going to squeeze your urethra and make your urethra narrow. And so, Arakmi, I would really encourage you to have a pelvic floor assessment if you haven't done that already. That's what they did back then. We had a couple years ago at the AUA in the IC class, I think a doctor from Egypt asked Rob Moldwin and Rob Evans if they performed urethral dilations. And one of them, I don't remember who it was, but one of them said, no, we don't rape the urethra anymore. I mean, that's really how they look at a dilation now. It's raping the urethra. The only time where a dilation really makes sense is if you can't pee, your muscles are so tight, your urethra's blocked, and that's a medical emergency. And that's when they would do insert a catheter and do a dilation. Veronica says, I have the same thing. Every sample I give has blood on some. Yeah, hon, all of my samples had microscopic blood. That doesn't mean anything. All that means is that your bladder wall is irritated in some way. And so let's just say you have estrogen atrophy, your bladder wall is thinner, your mucosal barrier is thinner, so urine is now reaching the skin. And what happens is when urine gets where it's not supposed to be, your immune system kicks in, and your immune system sends white blood cells to the area to kill the offender, because your immune system is thinking this is infection. Your immune system doesn't understand that, no, this is just urine that's gotten where it's not supposed to be. So all these white blood cells migrate to the area through your bloodstream. But when they get there, they're still in the capillary. And so what happens is the capillary opens and releases your white blood cells and some red blood cells so they can go kill the offender. But unfortunately, that's why you end up with red blood cells in your urine also. Rhonda said, my doctor said all IC patients have blood in their urine. I think that's fair. I have to wonder, though, if most people have blood in their urine, a little bit of microscopic blood in their urine anyway. I don't know. I don't know if that study's been done. Joan says, I have a Tarlov cyst on my lower spine. Could that cause the symptoms of IC? Absolutely. No doubt about it. Because that Tarlov cyst could be pressing on the nerves that control your bladder. Joyce says, I took Bladder Builder for 3 months and switched to Cystomand. I also take Peora. Is it safe to take all 3 at once? Right now, I'm just taking Cysto Renew and Peora. No, I certainly wouldn't take all 3 at the same time. You know, so I have a degree in pharmacology, drug development, right? And they taught us an important concept called lowest effective dose. What's the least amount of medication that you can take and still get a beneficial reaction from that? And as a redhead and as somebody who's uber sensitive, I know intuitively with my body through years of experience that my body does not tolerate more well. So whenever I take anything, I go for the lowest effective dose. And sometimes I even reduce that by half. So like with the first low acid vitamin, I literally cut it in quarters first. See if I could tolerate a quarter and then a half and then, and then a whole one. So I would be extremely uncomfortable with you taking full doses of all of those at the same time, hun. There's no reason to do that. The Cystomend is a really strong, robust formula, and quite a few patients are doing it and they really like it. And then you're taking the Piora to help calm the nerves down. So you don't need to take the bladder builder because you're already taking most of the bladder builder formula with the Cystomend and the Piora. The only thing you're missing is some good probiotics. So I personally would not do that. The less is more. Lou says, I'm in so much pain right now, but it never goes away. I take Elmeron, aloe, D-mannose, marshmallow root, oxycodone. You've had injections for a ganglion implant block, spinal cord stem, 3 heating pads between my legs. Please, anything to help me. So, Lou, I would absolutely love to talk with you this week. Tomorrow's my day off. Tomorrow's my birthday. So tomorrow really is my day off. Okay. I will not be answering the phone tomorrow. So don't try tomorrow. But Lou, I would absolutely love to talk with you any other day this week. I'm fully open. I'm just working on other IC 101 projects. I'm working on our IC 101 diet guide right now. Then I'll be working on our IC 101 flare management guide. Then we'll be working on our IC 101 menopause guide. And those are all companion pieces for the core book, IC 101. It's not just a bladder disease. You know, the AUA says it's time to stop what you're doing and take a step back and revisit the diagnosis. So you've done a lot of bladder therapies, but they're not helping you. You're in terrible pain. And you're also doing nerve blocks. And those are, I would love to know if those are working for you or not. And you're doing heating pads, back, abdomen, and between your legs for your urethra. So we need to talk. We need to talk about pudendal neuralgia. We need to, I would want to know what's going on with your muscles. Are your muscles super tight, et cetera, et cetera. Carry hope in your heart, hun. Carry hope in your heart. Now listen, I was where you were at one point in time. I didn't think anything would help me. And look at me, I'm symptom-free most of the time now. It was really about trying to find the root cause of that pain. They've missed something. And that's what we got to figure out is what could they have missed? The one thing I would really want you to do is go over to Amazon and get the book Facing Pelvic Pain by Dr. Elise Day, DE. It's from Harvard. I'm one of the invited authors in that. That is the book that goes over every other condition which can mimic IC and cause these symptoms. So it goes over musculoskeletal. It goes over the reproductive tract. Could you have fibroid tumors? Anything at all like that that's pushing on your bladder. We're gonna look at endocrine disorders. We're gonna look at other things. And so starting with that book and going through all of those other categories would be very important for you as you think about what triggered your pain. Like, what event do you think triggered your pain? And is there something else that they could have missed? Happens all the time. Happens all the time. Maud says, I've tried everything. Hydrodistension, installation, Lyrica, amitriptyline, all the nerve blocks. Physiotherapy, said my last option is Elmeron, concerned with my eyes, but I can't go on like this, ready for oxycodone. I'm in excruciating pain. What's my opinion on Elmeron? Elmeron is now linked to a very serious eye disease, so it's generally not being used anymore. You have to think about what Elmeron does. Elmeron is a coating. It's a bladder coating. It's like a chemical Band-Aid. So where Elmeron really would shine would be IC subtype 2 bladder wall driven, because it puts an extra barrier on top of your regular bladder lining to protect all those tissues down there. But the challenge with Elmeron is this bioavailability. 92% of Elmeron is destroyed by digestion. So at best, you might get 8% of that pill you've just taken that just cost you $1,000. At best, maybe $8 worth 8% might arrive into your bladder. But then you pee it out very quickly because it's a very small molecule. So the challenge with Elmeron You have to take a lot of it over a long period of time for it to develop a significant coating. And that's, I think, why we're now having the eye issues. It's a real shame that nobody ever worked to improve the bioavailability of Elmeron, because that 92% study was from Baker Norton, the researchers who invented it in the first place. So they all admit the bioavailability of Elmeron's poor, which is why you have to take a lot of it, which is why now we think we're dealing with all these retinal diseases. So if you wanted to try to mimic a bladder coating, you could go for a chondroitin-based supplement or a chondroitin-based bladder installation. You could do, I don't know where you are. If you're in the United States, it would be a heparin lidocaine installation or an Elmeron lidocaine installation. When you put Elmeron directly into the mouth, they don't believe that it gets into the bloodstream like it would if you swallowed it. But the bioavailability is still quite poor. But the challenge here is you're putting it directly in the bladder. And so most of the medication will arrive in the, well, all of it's going to arrive in the bladder, but you're still going to pee it out. So you could try those installations. If you're in Europe, you've got more options. I would be looking at Ialuril, Ialuril. Ialuril is a combination chondroitin and hyaluronate. Very, very successful in helping to give you a little bit of that coating in your bladder. Or you could try some of the supplements, Bladder Builder, Bladder Rest, Sister Protect. Our challenge here, and I owe a huge apology to our foreign international customers. If you're in Europe, July 1st, the European Union just changed the rule and we're required to collect VAT at the time of purchase. And we don't have software that will do that right now. So we have to, for any of our international customers, we have to send it to one of your American friends or your American family so that they can then send it to you as a gift. We cannot send it, any supplement, to the European Union, or we can't send anything to the European Union or the United Kingdom right now. Nothing. Nothing. And it sucks. But if you've got somebody here that we can send it to, that will work. You guys, the book IC 101 is available on our website and in our store on our website. And it will be on Amazon sooner rather than later. David, thank you for 530 stars. I feel very appreciated today. Thank you so much. Marie says, is there an order on how to treat it? I went for kidney stone, which I do have, but at that time it was IC. They put you on Peridium and diet change, but it's not completely gone, but better. What is the next step? Hun, come on over to our website on icnetwork.org and go through the treatment area. What's next, really, honestly, are supplements. The American Urology Association wants you to try supplements before you do bladder installations or oral medications because there are fewer side effects. So I would be looking at Bladder Builder, Bladder Rest, Sister Protect, Sister Renew, or Peora as your primary, or Allopath as your primary supplement options. Because once you get into the oral medications, you're looking at really significant side effects. Elmeron with the eye disease, Elavil is an anticholinergic. If you take that daily for 3 years, there's a increased risk of cognitive decline. And so the traditional medications come with really serious obstacles that the supplements don't come with. And that's exactly why the American Urology Association put supplements as a step 1 treatment option. And the other traditional meds are in step 2. They want you to start at step 1. Maud says, Pain Clinic offered you a lidocaine IV. What do you think of that? I don't know, hun. I don't know. I don't understand that. They want to put lidocaine into your bloodstream? I don't know. I mean, if they're doing lidocaine installations, that makes sense, but where they put lidocaine into your bladder, and that will numb your bladder wall, but doing lidocaine into your bloodstream, I don't think that that's done. Arakmi says, I hear you talking about tight detrimental muscles, head, dental IC. Why does this happen all over the body? Because of stress, girl. It's your autonomic nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system is responsible for protecting your life at any given moment of any given day. And it's monitoring your senses. It's monitoring, what are you smelling? What are you hearing? What are you touching? What are you tasting? And it's looking for threats. And once it detects a threat, you go into fight or flight, and your amygdala turns on, your sympathetic nervous system turns on. What does that do? It tightens your muscles because it's preparing you to flee, to fight, or to freeze. So your bloodstream everything changes when you're under fight or flight. And so we hold tension. I have a ton of tension in my neck. I get most of my tension in my neck from working in front of the computer. DJ says, I'm a bit overwhelmed right now. I was diagnosed on July 2nd with an E. coli UTI that turned into a kidney infection and landed me in the ER on July 4th. I was there until the 6th. Girl, I'm so sorry. I went into the week feeling okay, but I had an appointment with my urogyn on Thursday, and we did another urine sample because I was still having symptoms. It came back with E. coli ESBL. You're getting InterStim done on the 19th for the trial, as well as 200 units of Botox. I would imagine that I cannot imagine that they would want to do InterStim with you having a very severe infection, hun. You need to make sure you tell them about that. You got to work with your doctor, hun. E. coli is very challenging bacteria. It has incredible defense mechanisms. And so some of the hardest infections to kill are E. coli infections. Hopefully they've done a next generation DNA urine test to really identify more about that specific E. coli, as well as the correct antibiotic to kill that E. coli. Callie says, I'm 47, 3 weeks post-hysterectomy. I would have done it earlier if I had to do it over again. Yeah. Nora, went on Premarin until age 60. It saved me. Okay. Callie says, I took estrogen for 6 weeks and had hundreds of blood clots in my right leg. I avoid all hormones now. Yeah, that's one of the risks. Joy says, is it safe to take multiple bladder products at one time, specifically Bladder Builder, Pure? I answered that earlier. I wouldn't do that. I would either do the Bladder Builder or I would do the Cystomend and the Pura. I would not do all three of them. That's a lot of stuff together. They're not meant to be taken together. DJ says, I started pelvic floor PT, but because of the tightness of my muscles, both in my pelvic floor and my vagina, the physical therapist said that until I get my Botox, I shouldn't do any work, not even Kegels. Well, you wouldn't do Kegels with tight muscles. The last thing you would want to do is do Kegels when you have tight muscles, because that will only make them tighter. Where did that go? I can understand that. Just try to understand that sometimes there's a reason why your muscles are really, really tight, and it might have to do with a bad hip, a bad knee, a bad joint, a bad foot. And until we get to that underlying reason as to why your muscles are so tight, like a bad hip, physical therapy is going to be really, really important. But the odds are it's going to go back into tension. So you're going to have to become a master of the wand until they can fix the underlying issue, right? If it's a bad foot, it might just be orthotics in your shoes. Hege Callie, thank you again for your stars. Maud says she has PGAD. Yeah. That's pudendal neuralgia. So with PGAD, that your pain is always the worst when lying down. And my pudendal neuralgia also was the worst in my left butt cheek when laying down. So hopefully, Maud, you're doing some pelvic floor work along with something that will calm those nerves down, like Peora or Neurontin. David, no, we have not talked about Vista Urology. So the premier pelvic pain clinic on the West Coast is Vista Urology, that's run by Dr. Christopher Payne and Dr. Jeanette Potts. They have announced that they are retiring and they're closing their clinic at the end of this year. It's just heartbreaking, but they are my age, you know. Listen, you got to understand. There was this great picture of a doctor underwater with his hands up holding a patient above water to save their lives. This COVID, I mean, as if their lives weren't hard before COVID. You have to understand that doctors are destroyed right now, physically, mentally, and emotionally. They are leaving right and left. I understand why. We've lost a lot of doctors to COVID. They are literally risking their life to save somebody who was stupid enough not to wear a mask. I'm sorry. That's how I feel about it. That's how I feel about it. And they're so frustrated. Imagine you just work 12 hours in a COVID clinic, risking your life, having to call families, hard decisions, telling people they're going to die, whatever. And then you get out in your car and you drive away and you see people not wearing masks because they think they're impervious to this. And now we got the Delta variant and the Lambda variant. Are you kidding me? The worst case scenario here is that the Delta variant mutates. That the people who are getting sick with Delta, they just had, I think, 1,000 new cases in LA County. That's where the next mutation is going to happen. And if that mutation, if Delta mutates into something even more virulent that none of our vaccines will kill, we are toast. Everybody should be wearing a mask right now. I don't care how you feel. People are dying, and we're trying to stop the virus from replicating here and mutating. No excuses. No excuses. I have a family member who, well, my dad actually refuses to get vaccinated. And you know what that means? That means I can do nothing. I can do nothing because I'm his caregiver. I'm fully vaccinated. I go to the store, I wear a mask. If I bring the Delta variant back, it's going to kill him. It's going to kill my mom. And so we're down. I'm fully prepared to accept another year of being homebound. And I think it's quite possible if we let this get out of control. I mean, that's real talk. Oh, David, you got this cysto? Good. I'm glad you got it. Callie says, pre-leaf helps a lot, but I learned to just eat the foods that don't trigger me and only drink water. Yeah, you got to find your right balance here. Rockney said, what was the acid that went with the dilation? Hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid is even though it says acid, it's also known as sodium hyaluronate. It actually has a protective coating effect. Stephanie says, I had adhesions from endometriosis, 12 surgeries to clean them out. It caused damage with more adhesions. That was 22 years ago. Yeah, girl, I'm so sorry. You know, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? And that's where we need to be really angry at corporate America, because we now know what causes endometriosis, and that is estrogen mimicking chemicals like dioxin. And so many people believe that endometriosis is the perfect man-made disease. And we knew that in the 1980s when dioxins are produced when you burn plastic. And so the plastic industry was trying to prove that dioxins were safe, and they were doing monkey studies. So they were exposing monkeys to ever increasing levels of dioxin. And one of the monkeys died. And they did a laparotomy to try to figure out why the monkey died, and she was filled with endometriosis. And then it happened again, more endometriosis. And they ended up canceling the study. They made a very clear a very clear relationship. Dioxin is an estrogen mimicker. It will trigger the growth of tissue based upon estrogens because it mimics estrogen. So what the mistake that they made is that they published that study in a chemical journal. And the Endometriosis Association in their first or second year found that study. They found that paper. And they were getting ready to sell all the monkeys to another research center, which is disgraceful. Don't even get me started on animal research. That's why I left pharmacology. So they went to the Endometriosis Association, went to the National Institutes of Health and said, before you sell them, can we please do exploratory laparotomies on them? And let's see what we find. And every single monkey exposed to dioxin had endometriosis. The more dioxin they were exposed to, the greater the endometriosis. And so the challenge here is that when you burn plastic and it goes out the smokestack, when you burn plastic in your chimney, which you should never do, and that includes that includes wrapping paper from Christmas, you should never do that if it has plastic in it. The byproduct, dioxin, goes right up your chimney, goes out into the environment, into the grass. And then your milk cows eat the grass. So now we've got the dioxin in the milk. And then you eat the milk, or your children drink the milk. And so endometriosis, I think if I remember correctly, back during World War II, there were like 20,000 cases in the world. Today, there are millions of cases around the world. And we believe that that's all from plastic being burned and compromised. I did an interview with the Endometriosis Association founder who told me that story. People looking for this phone number of the IC Network, it's on our website, it's on our Facebook page, 800-928-7496. Maud is from Montreal, so you did the RIMSO installation. So Maud, you have an advantage in Canada because you have Cystostat and Uracyst and Ioluril. None of those are available here in the United States, and they are significantly better than the DMSO, RIMSO. So ask your doctor about Ioluril, Ialuril, Ioluril. Joyce, my pain seems to be mostly triggered by needing to have a bowel movement. If no pain prior to the bowel movement, then I have pain after the bowel movement. Usually pain before and after. The pain feels like it's in the urethra and the vagina. Hello, pelvic floor. Yeah, pelvic floor, especially if you're straining to have a bowel movement. You know, I have no shame. I'm willing to talk about anything. You know that. So I have a very, very sensitive rectum and perineum. My skin, you know, the combination of being the redhead combined with the years of pelvic floor stuff that were missed. And I feel anything that's in there. And the more that's in there, the more irritated I get. So I usually have to do something about that, usually involving love and KY. Just saying. I call it rectodynia. And, you know, for patients with chronic overlapping pain conditions, it's very common. Rectodynia is a name that I made up, but it's quite common. There's also a condition called proctalgia fugax, which is very, very severe bowel pain. It just comes on suddenly. And when it's happening, it's the worst cramp in the world, and you cannot move for 5 or 10 minutes. And you go to the doctor, and they're like, we see nothing wrong. And Dr. Weiss, in his book Breaking Through Chronic Pelvic Pain, talks about that. That's just a rectal spasm, bowel spasm, rectal spasm. And I've had those too. Mm-hmm. To have normal bowel movements, you need to eat 20 to 25 grams of fiber a day. If you're a woman, 25 to 30 grams of fiber. If you're a man, what have I had so far today? I've had 2 pieces of Ezekiel bread. So that's 6 grams of fiber. And then I put 2 teaspoons of Heather's tummy fiber in my smoothie. So I think I'm now at 10, 11 grams of fiber today. So I still have 10 more to go. And which means I'm going to be eating beans or refried beans or baked beans or peas tonight. It's just, I totally understand why my grandmother obsessed about having bowel movements every day, because it just gets more annoying as you get older. Rhonda says, what do you think about compounded Valium? I'm not hearing enough positive feedback. I don't want to waste money. What would you suggest to help tight pelvic muscles, nerve pain because it's hard driving? Well, you probably wouldn't be able to take vaginal Valium if you're driving, because Valium has a sedative effect. But I would be trying baclofen, B as in boy, A, C as in Charlie, Lofen. Baclofen is a non-sedating skeletal muscle relaxant that you can use driving and you can use working. It's an oral med, and that might be better for you. But also, you definitely need a chair cushion so that when you're sitting, you're not putting pressure on the pelvic floor. And let me go get the chair cushion that we recommend. My dad sits on it. Hold on, I'll be right back. Oh, my leg is stiff. Probably wrapping. All right. Sorry. I was looking for my mom. And I realized she's locked in a bedroom wrapping birthday presents right now. That's what she does. All right. Okay. So, you really, if you've got pudendal neuralgia, you really need a cushion like this. And you can turn it either way. So you can have, if you've got PGAD, you can have the opening in front, or if you've got tailbone pain, you can have the opening in back. And so this is a CAPS cushion. This is a chronic pelvic pain cushion. Extremely high quality, excellent fabric. Unfortunately, the other cushions that we had, the manufacturer stopped making them because of COVID, so I can't get those right now. The old blue ones cost like $25. These are in the $70 range, but they're much, much, much higher quality and will last a much longer period of time. So in the end, they're worth it. So Rhonda, really, you need one of these cushions. Their travel cushion has a total groove down the middle. That's a great cushion too. When you got pudendal neuralgia, the first thing you learn is you cannot do the thing that triggers the nerve. And so if sitting for a long period of time triggers a nerve, you got to fix how you're sitting. Because the longer you sit on that nerve, the more you're irritating that nerve. Maud said she's going to call me this week. Girl, I would love to talk with you. Listen, let's sit down. We'll do it. Let's talk this week, okay? You can call me. Just understand, Tuesdays tend to be pretty busy. I get lots of people who call. If you get my message, just leave your name and number and I will call you back, okay? Norma says, I never had bladder pain, just urgency. Is that IC, just urgency alone? The urgency is coming from the alpha afferent nerve in your bladder wall. That's what drives frequency and urgency. The pain comes from a different nerve group called the C fiber. The C fiber is actually a really hard nerve to turn on. Normally, it takes a traumatic event to trigger the C fiber. So the fact that you've got frequency urgency says a couple of things. It says, number one, it may be that your bladder wall is being irritated, perhaps by estrogen atrophy or something that you're eating. Or it could relate to a nerve dysfunction called overactive bladder. If you are running to the bathroom with urgency because you're worried that you're going to be incontinent, that's overactive bladder. That's more of a nerve issue. You would work with your doctor about overactive bladder medications. So again, if you're running to the bathroom with urgency because you're trying not to leak, that's overactive bladder. But we also really want to look at the quality and health of your skin and your age. Because if your vulva is dry and your vagina is dry, so is your urethra and so is your bladder. That could explain it. And if you're young, don't assume it's perimenopause. Sometimes it's related to birth control. Anything that limits your estrogen is potentially going to make your bladder wall more sensitive and vulnerable. And there could be other things, maybe tight pelvic floor muscles. Did you have a trauma of some type? So you know, we need to, if this is disrupting your daily life and functionality, we have to do an appropriate and proper workup, and let's make sure that there's nothing else going on. Our website's a really good place for you to begin, Norma, and hopefully you'll take that information back to your doctor and say, hey, doc, can you tell me, is my vulva dry? Could this be related to a little bit of estrogen atrophy? Or, hey, doc, I'm reading that muscles can cause some of this frequency urgency. Are my muscles tight? You know, sex is uncomfortable. Sex is kind of uncomfortable. Could that relate to my muscles? You know, you need to have a doctor, different types of doctor do different types of examinations. Rockme says, you are truly a lovely, helpful lady. It is amazing you can go gray and look so young. Happy birthday. Your kindness shines through. Thank you, Rockme. I'm not going gray. I'm going white. That's the redhead revenge. For every one of you who teased your redhead, you're going gray. I stay red, and then I will slowly just turn white. All my redheaded sisters, they know what I'm talking about here. In fact, I have to tell you, I was doing a Zoom meeting with this new research team, and the lead researcher reached out to me, was my twin. I'm not lying. We turned the Zoom on. Her picture showed first. I turned my camera on. We gasped. We looked like sisters. It was hysterical. And it's so fun to actually talk with other redheads and try to make sense of these weird double recessive sensitive bodies that we have. Joan says, is azo safe to take for a couple of days? Yeah, but azo is not meant to be taken for long periods of time. Azo is just numbing the nerves in your bladder. You know, it's treating a symptom. It's not treating a cause. We have to go past the azo and try to understand causation. Why is your bladder wall sensitive? Is it sensitive because you've got estrogen atrophy? If that's the case, then to address the cause, we're probably going to be using some topical estrogen. And we have all the azo products. You can see them up on my shelf here. We've got all the azo products in our store. Joan says, will estradiol help the bladder? Yes, it will. When you use topical estradiol vaginally, some of that will also reach the bladder and help the bladder. And the research studies show that the skin immediately starts using that estrogen to produce more mucus in your bladder. Ryan says, I see chronic prostatitis, pelvic floor dysfunction, chronic pelvic pain syndrome. How do we get to the cause? I feel like most doctors just minimize everything. You know, Ryan, that's really what we're all working on right now. And I attended a fabulous conference last fall by Zoom. I love Zoom for meetings, so I don't have to go anywhere. And it was all about chronic overlapping pain conditions. Why do some people get IC and IBS and vulvodynia, for women, or prostatodynia for men, TMJ, fibromyalgia, etc. And for that group of patients, there is that really speaks to the central nervous system. And what the research studies have found is that we are stuck in fight or flight. Our brains are stuck in fight or flight. And the great news here is we know exactly what to do to fix that. We know exactly what to do to fix that. The challenge is that you, the patient, and some doctors, you keep focusing on the target organ. You're not making the connection between all of the other pain conditions. When you are under constant fight or flight, that creates a cascade-like effect of bad things happening throughout the body. You're living in perpetual muscle tension. You're living in perpetual anxiety. And anytime you're anxious, your body will intensify that brain. You got to remember, guys, listen, the brain is extremely animalistic. There is no cognitive functioning in the brain. That sounds weird, but let me, in the fight or flight response, let's take a step back and think about this here. How does your brain process information? With your senses. It is paying attention to what you hear. Is it a siren? Or is it somebody laughing? What do you smell? Is it smoke? Or is it a fresh apple pie baking in the oven? What do you taste? Is it poison or is it honey? What are you touching? Is it hot and damaging or safe? Your brain is always processing your senses to figure out how you're doing. And then it's comparing that information with your history. Okay, that's a new smell. Is that a bad smell or a good smell? And your brain's going to go, yeah, you smelled that 2 years ago when somebody was repairing their roof. Or no, that's not new. No, I've never smelled that before. What is it? Or it might be something like this, rose spray. That's perfectly good. And this is actually a really great way of giving your brain something pleasant to focus on, right? Rather than something caustic. So your brain is processing your senses and comparing it to your history. And then at the conference, the class that was the most important was the class that focused on risk factors. What are the risk factors here? And what they found is that for 80% of the children who developed these chronic overlapping pain conditions, they suffered a major physical trauma, like getting hit by a car or breaking a leg or, falling on their tailbone. Something physical damaged them pretty badly. And I think one of the challenges that children have who get hurt is that they're not believed, and they might not be treated correctly and quickly with pain care, because there are quite a few people who don't listen to children when they say they hurt or they don't believe that children are in pain. And that goes for doctors. Our IC pain specialists, children's specialists, literally did not believe children experience bladder pain. That's the first time I ever spoke at a national meeting. It was immediately after he spoke, and I went, "You're crazy. That's not true." So 80% of the children that this happened to had a major physical trauma that apparently was not treated promptly and correctly. The remaining 20% were either abused or bullied. And I think the bullying example is really the best way to understand what happens. So imagine that your child or you had a really bad bully at school. Violent. like I did. I had a really bad bully at school, for sure. I mean, he raped and murdered my neighbor a few years later. So this guy was really off the charts, mentally ill. Okay, so so imagine a child who, for not a week or a month, but year after year after year, is bullied. So when they open the door in the morning, they're looking and they're walking to school. They're always looking around. They're looking around. Is he here? Is he here? Is he here? Where is he? And then that child gets closer to school and walks into school. Now that child becomes hypervigilant. Oh my God, where is he? Is he there? Is he there? Is he there? Is he there? Looking around. It's classic hypervigilance. And throughout that day, that child is in constant fight or flight because their brain thinks their life is at stake. It's that animalistic. Even though their life might not be at stake, their brain interprets it that way. And the only break that child gets is when they walk in their door at the end of the day and they're at home for a couple of hours and there's no way the bully can get them. And they've got 3 or 4 hours of relaxation until mom says, hey, hon, got to go take a bath, got to go to school tomorrow. Bam, fight or flight again. Fight or flight again. Now, what we know from the brain studies is 20 days, just 20 days of bullying will change brain function for the worse. And I was listening to yet another podcast, and it was on anxiety, and it was on Body Stuff by Dr. Jen Gunter yesterday, where they were talking exactly about this and the amygdala and the sympathetic nervous system and what happens with that. So when you are anxious, your brain is going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Your life is at stake. Your life is at stake. Your life is at stake all day, every day. All day, every day. And your brain will intensify pain because it's adding that to the anxiety. And it really thinks, okay, this is really bad. Oh my God, I better get your attention. I better intensify that pain because you got to save your life, right? So pain that is accompanied by anxiety will be intensified by the brain. It's called context. Pain that is accompanied by laughter will be minimized by the brain because you're laughing, and your brain knows then that your life is not at stake because you're laughing. So 20 days of bullying changes brain function for the worst. And what they said is they said your nerves rewire. And so the example they gave was walking across a field of grass. You walk across the first time and you don't make a path. But if you walk that way every day, slowly the grass gets tamped down and you can clearly see where you're walking. And she said that's kind of what happens to your nervous system under anxiety, is you get wired in a certain direction. And so what we have to do is we have to break that wiring and restore normal functionality. How do we do that? How do we get your brain out of fight or flight so that all these muscles will relax and you're not so hypervigilant and anxious? We do that with mind-body medicine. So if somebody says, hey, you need to go take a mind-body class, do not get angry at them. They're right. If you're living with anxiety every day and you got chronic overlapping pain conditions, your brain is screwed up. I know. I was there. Okay. And mine is not screwed up now, and I don't live with anxiety anymore. I mean, I know exactly what to do if I start getting anxious. I never let it get out of control like I used to. So with mind-body medicine, all we're going to do is give the brain good sensory input. That's all we're doing. We're telling our brain to focus on something else that's healthy, to get it out of the rut of being unhealthy. And so we might do tapping. So tapping is a way to get your brain to focus on something that's innocuous. So with tapping, it's called emotional freedom tapping. It works beautifully. It's been studied by Harvard Medical School. So don't think this is a load of crap. This is not a load of crap. When you understand what we're trying to do with the brain, it makes sense. So with tapping, what we're going to do, let's just do it right now, guys. Let's just do it because I love doing these things with you guys. Let's do a set of emotional freedom tapping. Take us 5 minutes. And let's see how you feel afterwards. So normally when we do tapping, we're going to touch different parts of our body because we want our brain to focus on what we're touching. And then we want to give it something good to focus on. So we're just going to focus on being confident and our self-esteem. Okay, so we're going to start right here on the karate chop, right? So do this with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and then you say, I'm a good person. I've done nothing wrong. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm a good person. I have done absolutely nothing wrong. This is not my fault in any way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I am a good person. I am strong and confident. I can hold my head up high. Right? Got to have good things that you say to yourself when you're doing this. And of course, your brain's going, why are you doing that? And your brain's going, well, it's not threatening. It's okay. But you see your brain's paying attention to that. Now we're going to go here. Let's go here. So we're going to go right on the bone, right where your eyebrows start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can do all things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Every day in every way, my life is going to get better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I am strong and confident. Okay, now we're going to go here. We're not doing the temples. We're going on the bone, right on the side of the eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can do all things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Every day in every way, my life will get better and better and better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That which is done for you, let it be done. That which you must do for yourself, do it. Obviously, you can tell I throw affirmations in. Okay, now we're going to go here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can do all things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've done nothing wrong. There's no shame. There's no blame. I'm hurt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can walk into any doctor's office with confidence. I'm a partner in care. They are not better than me. They are equal to me. Now we're going to go here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can do all things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I am proud of myself. I have worked really hard getting through this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have faith. I believe in my future. I can conquer anything. Okay, now we're going to do here, right below your lip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Every day in every way, my life will get better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I am strong and confident. Bring it. Bring it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I am more prepared to deal with whatever happens to me than I am the most prepared than I've ever been to deal with whatever happens to me right now, right at this very moment. Okay, now we're going to go to the collarbones. There are your collarbones. I want you to go inch down from your collarbone. I want you to inch out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can do all things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I am strong and confident. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have nothing to be ashamed of. I am a good person. All right. Now we're going to do under the arm, your bra line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Insert your favorite or your faith, whatever it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I am damn proud of myself. My God, look at everything I've done to get through this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I am a great friend and I welcome everybody. Okay. Last but not least, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can do all things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have never been more prepared to deal with life than I am at this very moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Bring it, baby. I'm not a kid anymore. I can handle stress. Bring it. Life, I am ready for you. All right. Now, how do you feel? How do you feel? Tell you one thing. You're not focusing. Your brain's just like going, well, okay, that was interesting. You were just touching different parts of your body, totally not threatening, but damn, that was a great pep talk. right? You can see that that makes sense. Now, the other one that I really love is I Spy. So let's do I Spy too, because I think I Spy is probably even better. Because what we're going to do is we're going to, again, force our sympathetic nervous system off. We're going to reduce everything that's triggering some of that pain, and we're going to rewire it in a positive and more effective way. So in I Spy, we're going to do a very clear sensory information. So I want you to pick something in your room and I want you to just look at it, something that's distinctive. So for me, I got a board of Post-it notes up here with all the projects I'm supposed to be working on, like revised flare guide, revised diet guide, do an article on solar therapy, do my monthly email, do an article on trigger points, do a proposal for this, interview a doctor. Okay, I'm just looking at the colors because they're all colorful Post-its. All right, let's take a nice, slow, deep breath in and out. All right, what can you hear? Can you hear anything right now besides me? Do you hear TV on, children laughing, birds singing? Just take a moment and just listen to your environment. What do you hear? An air conditioner? A radio playing? Okay, let's take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Okay, what can you smell? You smell anything right now? Just take a moment. Smell anything? And this is where aromatherapy, is good. Yeah, I smell rose water. Okay. It's so good. It's aloe and rose water. Okay, breathe in and breathe out. Okay, what do you taste? Can you taste anything? Can you taste anything? Did you just eat something? Are you chewing gum, sucking on a mint? Live in the taste for a moment. Okay, let's breathe in and breathe out. Now, I want you to touch something that has a texture to it. Touch something that has a texture to it. So I'm going to touch these muscles. Okay, I'm touching a model. Okay, but they have a texture, right? So if you're sitting on a couch or a chair that has a texture, just rub your hands over the texture. You're really getting your brain to just pay attention to that texture. And you have some sharp edges of the bone, right? Okay, we're just touching things. Now let's take a nice, slow, deep breath in and a deep breath out. Okay, now comes the fun part. Oh, wait. Oh, no, I did it. I did the 5 senses. And now comes the fun part. If you could look at anything that would put a smile on your face, what would that be? What would that be? What would you just love to look at and it would immediately make you smile? And for me, it would be a cat or a dog or my cousin Susie, who showed up at 11 at night at the front door. He lives in Southern California. It was incredible. Okay, so live in that joy and take a deep breath in and out. Okay. What could you hear that would put a smile on your face? What could you hear that would put a smile on your face? Children playing, birds singing, a hawk crying, flying over your house? Live in that sound for a moment. Let's take a nice, slow, deep breath in and out. What could you smell that would put a smile on your face? I know immediately what it would be. Hot cinnamon rolls or hot apple pie, bacon in the oven. Easy peasy. Okay, we're going to breathe in and breathe out. What could you taste that would put a smile on your face? What could you taste? Again, easy peasy. It's going to be hot cinnamon roll for me. Just live in that taste for a moment. Great happy memories in and out. And then what could you touch that would put a smile on your face? What could you touch that would put a smile on your face? Petting a cat or a dog. Easy peasy. Or a child. Let's breathe in and breathe out. Now, how do you feel? I mean, seriously, you have a freaking smile on your face, don't you? Because you've just given your brain 5 solid senses associated with a happy, wonderful, joyful memory. It is impossible for your brain to be unhappy at this moment unless you didn't do it. This is the perfect example of mind-body medicine. So understand that the Chronic Pain Research Alliance and the IC community, MAP Research Network, have been doing brain studies for a decade. Nobody's making this up. And nobody's saying that this is all in your head. And nobody's saying this is a mental illness. What we're saying is that it's a central nervous system maladaptation. It means that your amygdala in your brain, your sympathetic nervous system in your brain has just become habituated to fear. And we have to turn it off. And we turn it off with good sensory information. And what the research studies show from Harvard, they can take guys coming back from the war with severe PTSD, walk them through tapping, emotional freedom technique, and or I Spy, and their amygdala stays turned off for hours afterwards. So this is so incredibly exciting, but you've got to do your work and not take offense if somebody says, hey, have you tried a little bit of meditation? You have to admit and acknowledge that anxiety will intensify pain. It is in your best interest to learn good anxiety management skills, and it is in your best interest to embrace positivity like I do, and it is in your best interest to take a moment and just don't feel bad about it. Don't feel guilty about it. You didn't do anything wrong. God didn't give you the skills to deal with this when you were born. It's about just learning new skills. That's it. It's that easy. And so if anxiety is an issue, I have a great video on IC and anxiety in our website that shares the class I took. I have not had a single panic attack since I took that class 25 years ago. I know exactly what to do. As soon as I feel that first anxious thought, it's a stop sign, deep breath, minimize the thought. I never let the anxiety get out of control. I don't. And that means on the way to the hospital for emergency hysterectomy, no panic. I was doing my stop sign, deep breath routine. Middle of fires, got everybody out, wasn't panicking, got the car packed. Fire was coming down the hill. I was doing my stop sign, deep breath, didn't have a panic attack. Okay, so it's about learning skills. DJ says, hope you have an amazing birthday tomorrow. Thank you, DJ. I'm going to try. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I might just take a nice long walk. Norma says, I'm never in pain. Eating the wrong food triggers urgency. Let's see. And you're never in pain. Eating the wrong food triggers urgency. My doctor diagnosed me with having a lack of estrogen, went for a second opinion, got diagnosed with IC. Oh, okay, honey, you don't need to be confused. Norma, don't be confused. If you don't have enough estrogen, that's IC subtype 2, bladder wall driven, also known as the genital urinary syndrome of menopause. This is great news because we know what to do about that. You know, your bladder relies on estrogen to produce, think about your bladder this way. Your bladder is designed to store toxic waste. Urine is body waste. Urine contains ammonia, urea, all sorts of icky stuff. So how can the bladder hold ammonia for hours at a time and not get damaged? Well, it's because your bladder is like your mouth. It's a hollow organ covered with a really thick coating of mucus. And the purpose of that mucus is to act as a barrier. It keeps all the toxins away from your skin. It's thick, it's robust. We call it the mighty mucus. Unfortunately, it's estrogen dependent. So when you're young and you have lots of estrogen, you have lots of mucus, you can get away with drinking a lot of soda and coffee because that mucus is really thick and it's not going to let any of those irritants reach you. But honey, aging plays a role. When you're on birth control and your estrogen levels are low, or you're in perimenopause or menopause or postmenopausal, guess what? You don't have a lot of mucus anymore because you don't have a lot of estrogen. That's not a disease. That just means that your bladder can't defend itself. It cannot defend itself against your urine as well as it used to be able to do that. And again, that's not a disease. That's just aging. You should Google genitourinary syndrome of menopause so that you can understand all of these, or better yet, get we women do not get a good education on what to expect with menopause. Jen Gunter has written this fabulous book called The Menopause Manifesto. Get it. It's so good. It's just like, oh my God, oh yeah, I have that. Okay, yeah, I have that. And there's a whole chapter on bladder health and what it does to the bladder. And so the great news here is that, we can actually give that skin what it needs to produce mucus, and that is topical estrogen. And then if you can't do topical estrogen for one reason or another, then we're going to be doing something that will put a barrier in there, like coconut oil on your external skin and stuff. So there's no mystery here. Estrogen atrophy is part of IC subtype 2 bladder wall driven. Also in that subtype is chemotherapy. If your symptoms began after going through chemotherapy, if your symptoms began because you drank a massive amount of green tea or diet soda or stuff like that, that's an IC subtype 2. Somebody is asking about adenomyosis, again, is that thickening of the uterine wall, and complex endometrial hyperplasia or simple endometrial hyperplasia. It's a buildup. Remember that your hormones regulate your ability to have a child, and so your uterine wall will thicken, and then once you don't implant a child, then your uterine wall sloughs off that tissue, and it's all a balance between estrogen and progesterone, right? But when you stop, or when you're older, and you don't have as much estrogen to trigger that process, slowly over time, the tissue builds and builds and builds and builds, and it doesn't come out. And your endometrial lining gets thicker and thicker and thicker. And they say normal is 3 to 4 millimeters. Cancer is 12 millimeters. And if you're somewhere in between, it means something not so good might be happening. Arakmi said, if tight muscles all over the body are related to the autonomic nerve, is there a test for this? Yeah, brain scan. No, there's no biopsy. You could do a biopsy for small fiber polyneuropathy on the lower skin. Callie says, is there any connection between adenomyosis and IC? Well, they both trigger pain. Thank you, Hege. She says, I wish you a wonderful birthday. Ryan says, whatever I have, it rewired my brain exactly how you are saying. But okay, so Ryan, the cool thing here is we know exactly what to do. 20 days of mind-body medicine reverses the damage from 20 days of bullying. It's called neuroplasticity. The brain is remarkably successful at repairing damage. Remarkably successful at repairing damage. I think the challenge here is that, your bladder is screaming at you, your bowel might be screaming at you, your skin might be screaming at you, and you're very focused on bladder, when it's actually stress, anxiety, and muscle tension that's driving that. It's very normal to be very resistant to that and be offended if somebody brings that up. But my very first appointment, my doctor said, I'd like for you to take a class in mindfulness. And I basically yelled at him and said, it's my bladder, And now I know he was absolutely right. All he had to hear was me say I had ICIBS vulvodynia, and he knew right away what was going on, that I was a chronic overlapping central sensitization patient. He was absolutely right. I was wrong. And I think the thing that turned the corner for me was the anxiety management class I took and the positivity stuff that I did like a year later. I think that's why I got better. But I really regret in hindsight not taking the mindfulness class that he wanted me to take. It would have given me good skills, because this is about skill building. This isn't about anybody saying it's all in your head. Nobody's saying it's all in your head. It's about learning how to use your body effectively and how to recognize dysfunction in your body and change it for the better. Living in anxiety every day is exhausting. We don't want to be there. We can break that. But it's about rewiring your brain with good sensory information and learning good skills. So Callie says, I enjoyed that. My pain level dropped. Exactly. Much more relaxed. Exactly. She says, Red Bull, I used to drink way too much. Oh yeah. We did a blog on that years ago. What's single worst drink that an IC patient could or an IBS patient could drink? Oh, easy Red Bull. Any energy drink like that. All right, so you guys, I have giveaways today. For those of you who stick it out in the end, look at what I have. Woohoo! Anybody want a free thing of pre-leaf? Calcium glycerophosphate, the #1 recommended supplement for the dietary management of IC, been around for 35 years. They've sponsored the IC movement literally from the year they founded this. It was created by Alan Kligerman, a master scientist who also invented Beano and Lactaid and catsup. So if you email me, icnetwork@mac.com, icnetwork@mac.com. I need your mailing address. Don't just email me and say, yeah, I'd like one. I can't send it to you over the internet. If you would like a free pre-leaf, email me, icnetwork@mac.com, your mailing address. I have a bunch to give away. And so I might be able to send, because it's the end of the day and I know quite a few people have left, I might be able to send everybody who sends me an email one of these. And this is it's just a mainstay in the IC world. Okay. All right. Well, last call for questions. IC Network at Mac, M as in Mary, A as in Apple, C as in Charlie.com. Email me your mailing address, and I would be more than happy maybe to send you a pre-leaf. Oh, I almost said Red Bull. No, I'm not going to send you a Red Bull. I'm going to send you a pre-leaf. All right, last call for questions. We've been doing this for 3 hours and 7 minutes. Anybody have any more questions? All right, my friends. Well, I think we'll call it here. I'm going to give you your homework. For 15 minutes a day, I need you to do something that will calm your spirit. I don't care what it is. Go sit outside in the sunshine, go to church, whatever will make you smile on the inside. That's what we want to do. For 15 minutes a day, I need you to work on your noggin. For goodness sake, come on over to a website and read a blog a day. Go to the ICA, read a blog a day. Go to the National, just read. Come on. 5 minutes, read an article. For 15 minutes a day, I need you to do something for your pelvic floor or your bladder. I mean, come on, get down on your back, lay on the floor, and do your stretches. Or if you need to, drop trow, grab your wand, and do your internal work. This is consistency here. We need to build some consistency. And then for 15 minutes a day, although honestly, I think it needs to be an hour or two a day, I want you to laugh. You know, I'm like really addicted to TikTok right now. I think TikTok's hysterical, absolutely hysterical. And I love the C chant It's the sea chant stuff, and I love the dancing TikToks. I want to do all of them. I need somebody close to me. Does anybody live here in Northern California who can get together with me so we can do some of these TikTok dances together? I'm dying to do these TikTok dances. All right, but for 15 minutes a day, preferably longer, please laugh because you deserve laughter and joy and happiness in your life. All right? Okay, so please remember, you've done nothing wrong. There's no shame, there's no blame. So if the last thing I want you to remember for me is hold your head up high. This is not your fault. You are not alone. We're doing this together. You're going to get through this together. All right, my friends? I will wish you well. Have a good one. Peace to everybody. And if you haven't listened to BTS's Permission to Dance latest song, it's awesome. That'll make you happy right away. Listen to it. BTS Permission to Dance. It's wonderful. Okay, I'll see you later. Peace. Rhonda says, I wish if I lived close. I know, man. I need more people here. I want to have a big group of IC buddies right here. If we burn, I will move somewhere where there's a lot of IC patients just so we can hang out together. How's that for looking at it in a good way? Hi, Marion. I'm good, hon. You came in late. We're just shutting down. It's been 3 hours. Oh, and I just hate the way my face looks when I turn this way. Marie says, with a kidney stone, can I take the vitamin you were talking about earlier? The bladder? Well, it has calcium glycerophosphate in it. And so if they don't want you to take calcium in it, then the answer is probably not. You have to ask your doctor what type of kidney stones you're having. Shannon says, how do you apply estrogen to the bladder topically? You put it vaginally. You can put it at your urethra, at the entrance to your urethra, on your vulva, and vaginally. You can't get it into your bladder. But when you put it vaginally, it will get to your bladder. Yeah, on your skin, hon. They give you a tube and you put it on your finger and you rub it around, or you use a little insert device, just like the yeast medication over the counter. All right, you guys. Peace. See ya. All right, Facebook is done. All right, my friends on YouTube, I wish you well. Y'all have a great day. And I think we'll be trying to do another drop-in meeting this week. I hope so. Okay, see you later.